Hello everyone, Zeno here. Here to bring in Season 2 Part 2 of What If TMNT Were Teleport in Avatar. Link down description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 3, Demons and Dragons. The night carried a blood-red sky with a bright moon hanging over a dark and twisted forest. Though the woods itself appeared to be dead with barren trees and rough soil, it seemed quite lively as the earth shook and fire shot into the skies. Aang was in the avatar state as he was encased in his own elemental sphere. A large air sphere surrounding his body, with rings of fire, water, and earth all around him as he faced an enormous monstrosity. Its body was coated entirely in shadows, but one could make out enormous wings, an elongated neck, and an open mouth with razor-sharp teeth in the silhouette. It gave a monstrous roar as Avatar Aang engaged this creature in battle. But the monster opened its mouth and shot out a blood-red blaze to halt the Avatar's advance as he tried to press back with his own elemental sphere acting as his only defense. But it wasn't just Aang in this forest. Leonardo, Katara, Raphael, Zuko, Toph, Donatello, Sokka, Michelangelo, even Azula and Master Splinter watched this epic clash with odd and even frightened expressions as it appeared that Aang was losing. Despite the Avatar's best efforts, the Crimson Inferno of the monster overpowered him and eroded away at his elemental sphere before the entire area was engulfed in a massive explosion, forcing the spectating heroes to cover their eyes. When the light subsided, they could only watch in terror as Aang's body fell from the sky and crashed onto the ground. He was completely covered in burns with blood already soaking down onto the ground. Aang! Katara exclaimed as she and everyone else tried to run and help him, but it was too late. He wasn't breathing, the Avatar was gone. Katara's eyes watered as she held his lifeless body and cried her eyes out. Leo, Mikey, Don, Toph, Sokka, and Splinter's eyes all watered, even Raph's fists clenched with frustration. Even Azula buried her face into her brother's shoulder as he also cried. But their mourning would not last as they all heard the neighing sound of a horse, only this one sounded more demonic than anything else. Out of the shadows of where the monster that struck down the Avatar once stood galloped a demon horse with black fur, razor-sharp teeth, black and red battle armor, and even a horn on its head. It left trails of black and red fire underneath its hoofs as it galloped. But that wasn't the most frightening thing about it. What terrified everyone the most was who was riding the horse. He wore dark purple, almost black, feudal Japanese armor with red highlights, a long red cape flowing behind him with bladed gauntlets and shoulder pads. Underneath his helmet were blood-red eyes that bore the essence of evil itself. The armored rider flashed a trident as it galloped toward the frightened heroes. "Run!" Master Splinter exclaimed in a panic as he and the young heroes tried to run, as it was all they could do in the face of this monster. Katara tried to carry Aang's lifeless body as they ran for their lives through the dark and twisted forest. Realizing they weren't going to get away, the turtles and remaining members of Team Avatar flashed their weapons in an effort to make a final stand. However, it was futile as the evil rider laughed and made short work of them. Splinter could only hear the sounds of screams and metal-piercing flesh as he looked back in terror. "My sons, young ones." The Dark Rider had slain every single one of them. Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello, Katara, Zuko, Azula, Toph, and Sokka all lain dead and broken, their bodies pierced with blood soaking into the ground. The rodent master fell to his knees in despair. No, he was the only one facing the Dark Rider now. Or so it would seem, as in a flash of golden light, someone he thought gone forever appeared before him. Master Yoshi. It seemed almost impossible. Hamato Yoshi, clad in his uniform for that of a guardian of the Utroms, surrounded by an aura of pure and golden fire appeared before Splinter. He carried a kind smile on his face as he offered his hand. However, the Dark Rider rode forward to pierce his trident into the back of Yoshi, who could only scream in agony, much to the horror of Master Splinter. "NNNNOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOO his frightened expression still clear on his face as he looked around the small room to find everyone was still sleeping, alive and well. Aang, Katara, Leo, Raph, Mikey, Sokka, Dawn, Toph, Zuko, Azula, and even Mai, Ty Lee, Karai, and Suki, all continued to sleep. Even Momo slept near Aang's head peacefully. Splinter sighed in both relief and worry. What have you gotten yourselves into? The next morning. Next one to ninja class is a rotten acolyte. Mikey said. Toph scoffed. I'd rather be rotten than here. Yeah, another day of laughs with the ninja tribunal, hold me back. Raph said sarcastically. The group of 10 acolytes, along with their 4 female companions, were walking through the monastery toward their intended destination where they would meet a member of the tribunal for the day's lesson. All of them dressed pretty normally, save for Azula, who was previously brought here in prison rags. Now she wore something more casual, well, about as casual as a royal princess could get with the red and dark pink outfit she wore before overthrowing Boss Sing Se. You guys sure you want to come with us? Aang asked Karai, Ty Lee, Suki, and Mai. I mean, since you're not technically acolytes, I wouldn't wanna get the tribunal mad. They seem like they're always mad, so I'm not complaining. Mai commented. Plus, if something crazy happens, we can help you guys. Suki added. I highly doubt the tribunal would even allow your assistance. Azula pointed out. Glad to know you still care, Azula. Mai said sarcastically to the former princess. I don't think they would do anything too extreme though. Ty Lee put her opinion in. I didn't see anything particularly evil in their auras when we first met. They kidnapped us, sicked some wooden soldiers on us, and tricked us with some crazy demon illusion as our first lesson. Sokka said. If that counts as not extreme, I hate to see them when they actually get mad. I still don't like this. Katara said disapprovingly. I get this threat they're preparing us for is supposed to be dangerous, but they could at least tell us what it is. I have a feeling we'll find out sooner or later. Zuko said. Yeah, probably when it's too late. Don commented. The group arrived at the scheduled meeting place. Okay, we're here. Where's our Shisho? Leo wondered as their instructor had yet to arrive. Hope it's not judo. Mikey began to joke as he put on an impression of the tribunal member. Your lack of skill and bad breath make me want to retch. Sokka chuckled. Yeah, or how about the big bad Hisame? The monster that ate the entire Earth Kingdom. Sokka then began to make motions and chomping noises for emphasis, which Mikey joined. Most of the group chuckled at this, though Azula simply rolled her eyes. However, everyone looked in surprise briefly before all, save for a smirking Azula, made a bowing gesture. Pissed. Guys, Suki tried discreetly warn the joking pair to something behind them. But Azula quickly covered her mouth as she smirked and put a finger over her own mouth, wanting to see the looks on the pair's faces. Mikey and Sokka stopped joking when they saw everyone's expressions. He's right behind us, isn't he? Sokka asked. Yep. Azula confirmed with a nod. Both knuckleheads turned around to see Hisame staring down at them with crossed arms and a disapproving expression. They chuckled nervously once they saw him. Hey Teach. Mikey tried to sound polite. Beautiful weather we're having, huh? Sokka tried to put on the same expression. Hisame then directed his attention toward the other acolytes and their companions, particularly to Azula. She noticed that he was looking at her and her smirk vanished. Yes. I think he wants you to bow. Ty Lee muttered to her. Azula scoffed. I don't bow to anyone. Except your old man and Shredhead. Raph pointed out. I'm not going to. Her rant was cut off by a glare for Hisame, one that would send even a chill down her spine. Fine. She bowed to him before Hisame made a hand wave, motioning for everyone to follow him. Hisame had led the young acolytes and their friends out of a cavern and toward a canyon, with a large wooden bridge stretching over a river from their end, all the way toward a small mountain with an enormous two-headed dragon statue at the top. Wow, these guys really like dragons. Sokka commented upon seeing the dragon statue. Well, who wouldn't? Dragons are really cool, Aang said. Heck yeah they are, Mikey exclaimed. Hey Leo, Zuko, Karai, remember when we visited Ran and Cha? The young avatar recalled excitedly. How can we forget? Leo replied with a half smirk. Who are you talking about? Azula questioned, causing Aang to wince slightly. Nothing that is of any concern to you, Azula. Karai told her, resulting in Azula narrowing her eyes at the kunoichi. Zuko leaned close to Aang with a whisper. Easy with the D word around her. We don't want to cause any more trouble with the Sun Warriors. Yeah, my bad. Guys, SSH. Katara shushed everyone as the group looked towards Hisame, who stood just shy of the bridge. Without saying anything, Hisame gestured toward the bridge, before walking 2 fingers across his arm. He then held up 3 fingers, placing each one down till he made a fist. However, it would appear that nobody got the message as they looked at each other with confused expressions. Can someone tell me what's going on here? How come this guy's not saying anything? Toph questioned. Ow. She felt a small smack against the back of her head. Perhaps if you listened to more than just talking, perhaps you would. The Ancient One said, having just revealed himself as he stood on a rock above and behind Toph. Master Hisami. He bowed to Hisami, who bowed back in return. Ancient One. Leo acknowledged, but was still surprised by his appearance. I still can't believe that's Master Yoshi's teacher. Katara whispered to her brother and Dawn, feeling honored to be in his presence. I know, our master. Dawn felt the same way. Kinda feels like a distant relative almost. I kinda thought he'd be one of those old tall guys, like Piendo, Iroh, or even Grand Paku. Sokka whispered somewhat skeptically. He's just so, short and pudgy, ow. The Ancient One had suddenly appeared behind Sokka to smack him on the back of his head. For someone who works alongside humanoid turtles, you should not make judgments based on appearances, young Sokka. The Ancient One said before jumping down to walk closer towards his former master. I will assist Hisami Shisho, for Ida was once Hisami Shisho's pupil in the shadow craft of stealth. That took nearly everyone by surprise. The Ancient One was a student of the tribunal. So, the tribunal are our masters. Sokka questioned. Try saying that 5 times fast. Raph commented. Hisami Shisho does not speak, the Ancient One began to explain to all the young warriors. For he embodies the 3 pillars of ninjutsu. Hisami held up his 3 fingers again for emphasis as the Ancient One continued. Speed, secrecy, and silence, young Azula. I didn't even say anything. Blessed silence. The Ancient One insisted, causing her to turn away with a scowl, resulting in smirks from Mai, Raph, and Toph. Hisami waved towards the bridge, which the Ancient One began to translate. He says, today, you will learn how to cross the honored Tatsuo Bridge, 200 yards long, and do so unseen. Is that even possible? Katara wondered. I do not think so. Karai answered. Not with an environment like this. Yeah, there's zero cover with direct sun, which means no shadows to hide in. Dawn added. Not to mention those creaky old boards don't help. Unless you plan to climb under the bridge, but I don't know if those boards can even hold. Suki put her opinion in, but suddenly the group heard a gust of wind. Everyone, even Azula and Toph, were completely stunned to find not only had Hisami had vanished from his original spot completely, but even reappeared on the other side. He had crossed the entire bridge in less than a second and hadn't even made a sound on the bridge itself. No way, Sokka exclaimed. Yes way, the Ancient One confirmed. Whoa, Ty Lee and Mikey were both speechless, as was almost the entire group. Incredible, Karai uttered. Not even airbenders could move that fast, Aang said in awe. He did not even make a sound. Zuko said with wide eyes. For reals, I didn't even feel him walk away with my feet. Toph stated. I'm actually jealous. Suki said. That did not just happen. Dawn could not find any sort of logic in what had just happened. All things are possible when mind, body, and spirit are harnessed to complete the same task. The Ancient One said as Hisami suddenly reappeared back in front of the acolytes and their friends just as quickly as he vanished, much to their continued surprise. That did not just happen again. Dawn exclaimed. Since when can the Ninja Tribunal violate the laws of physics? Sokka's inner skeptic was likely having the worst day of his life right now. Hisami waved his hand, prompting the Ancient One to once again translate. Hisami Shisho requires a pair of volunteers. Leo, Aang, and Zuko all stepped up, willing to volunteer themselves. Raph smirked as he whispered towards Toph. Hard to be silent when they're making all those sucking up sounds, hey. Raph whispered, earning a chuckle from Toph. However, Hisami actually walked past the 3 of them, and even past Raph and Toph, before coming to a stop right in front of Mikey and Sokka before he placed his fingers on both their foreheads, indicating that he wants the 2 of them, causing them both to gulp. Sokka and Mikey reluctantly stepped up toward the bridge as everyone else watched with worry. The Ancient One then relayed the necessary instructions. Focus inward, young ones. The old master began. Sokka, you view the world from a scientific standpoint, using logic. However, you must open your mind, believe in what you can no longer deny. Both of you must let go of how you originally view the world, see it only as light and fog. Hisumi pointed to both their hearts as the Ancient One translated once more. Find your Kai and imagine it as rushing wind, powerful, free-flowing, invisible, and serious for once, yes. The Ancient One left them to join the group of young warriors as they watched from a distance. Ancient One, not to sound rude, but how are we going to watch from all the way back here? Safety precautions, young Avatar. The Ancient One answered. Safety. For what? Leo asked. Remember you're Japanese, Leonardo. Tatsuo means. Leo's eyes winded as he shared a concerning glance with Karai. Dragon. They both said at the same time. The Dragon River. Leo muttered. Dragon River. Katara voiced aloud. Okay, now I'm getting a little worried. Good, so it's not just me. Suki was especially concerned, as was everyone else, save for Azula who looked more intrigued. Well, this should be entertaining, Azula thought to herself with a slight smirk. Mikey and Sokka were both beyond nervous, but nonetheless tried to get serious and focus. Okay, focusing my Kai, Sokka said, mostly to himself. Forgetting all science and logic, everything that makes sense in the world when really nothing makes sense at all. Breathing, Mikey tried to focus as well. Feeling the stealth, sneak into my heart, kinda. Hisumi pressed gently against both their backs, motioning for them to get forward. Hey, we're trying to focus here. Sokka complained as they went back to focusing. Okay, focus, stealth and invisibility. He closed his eyes and began to actually focus. Mikey did the same thing. Silent, stealthy. Both of their amulets then began to glow. Sokka's body began to emanate a silver-white aura, as silver-white horizontal lines formed on his arms, legs, his body, and even on his forehead. Mikey meanwhile had an orange aura as a glowing orange circle appeared on his face and orange curvy waves resembling energy waves appeared on his body as well. Mikey was the first to take a step on the bridge, and when his foot made contact, no noise was given. Sokka then took his step forward and made no noise as well, much to the surprise of everyone else, even Azula's smirk vanished. Mikey and Sokka exchanged concerning glances as they slowly proceeded to walk down the bridge, or rather tiptoe, in their case. But the more they focused, the brighter their respective auras glowed, and they made no noise whatsoever. Can someone tell me what's going on? Toph requested. I can't exactly feel anything on a wooden bridge. I think they're doing it, Don said in awe. Toph's dull eyes widened. Aang smiled. I think they got this, you got this, guys. Keep it up, he cheered. However, Azula could only look in disbelief. What? Those two idiots are actually doing it. A look of frustration, borderline envy, formed on her face. If those two clowns can do this, then obviously I should as well. Without even thinking, she ran towards the bridge. Azula wait. Zuko tried to stop her, but it was too late. The second her foot touched the bridge, it sent a loud creaky noise echoing throughout the entire canyon and toward the river below. Less than a second later, a loud growl was heard from underneath the bridge, prompting Mikey and Sokka to stop as their own auras faded and their own faces became filled with comic nervousness. Even Azula stopped in her tracks. What was that? Sokka asked in a tiny meek. Whatever it is, it doesn't sound good. Mikey also meeked as Sokka dared to look over one end of the bridge. Sokka screamed once he saw what was below them. No, it's not good. Definitely not good. Suddenly, a massive and long blue-scaled dragon shot up from the river and above the bridge before it roared and set its sights on the trio. Oh shell! Mikey and Sokka both screamed at the same time as they clung to each other. Everyone could only look in speechless shock. This was the first time any of them had set their eyes on a dragon, all save for Aang, Zuko, Leo, and Karai. Those four had seen dragons before, but something told them this particular dragon wasn't friendly. Azula fell on her rear as her eyes looked as though they were about to roll out of their sockets with her mouth kept opening and closing. A dragon, a real-life dragon was flying around her. It was a whole lot bigger than she'd thought it'd be. I think I know why they call this the Dragon River now. Ty Lee almost screamed. Leo got serious first, as he and everyone else drew their respective weapons or took bending stances. Move it. They need our help. Let's go. Zuko stated as the group began to run to protect their friends. However, even as the dragon flew and loomed over the trio of Mikey, Sokka, and Azula, it smacked back its tail to send Leo and Suki flying back towards the trees near the cave they exited when arriving. Leo, Suki, Katara exclaimed. That's it. This thing's going down. Toph shot multiple boulders from the ground at the dragon, as Zuko repeated the action with multiple fire fists. However, the massive dragon was fast enough to evade each of their attacks before it shot its head towards them, which actually turned into a large body of water to engulf not only Toph and Zuko, but also Raph, Mai, and Ty Lee before slamming the three of them against the stone wall. Katara tried to bend the water inside the dragon, but its lower body slapped its tail at her to send flying into the trees. Aang flew past Karai and Don as he tried to send waves of air in the dragon's direction only for its entire body to transform into water and slam into Aang to send him back into Don and Karai. Before Aang however could even think about bending the water in its body, the dragon turned solid again as it coiled its body around the trio to crush them. Suddenly however, the dragon was shot by a bolt of lightning in the face. This disoriented it for a second before it turned its attention back towards Azula, Sokka, and Mikey. I think you only pissed it off. Mikey said to the former princess. Well, I don't hear you coming up with any ideas. Azula shot back to the orange-clad turtle. Fight later. Survive now. Sokka almost screamed as the dragon roared and shot its open mouth at them with the intent to eat them alive. Mikey, Sokka, and even Azula covered their eyes as they couldn't avoid it in time. However, when nothing happened, the trio slowly peeked only to look in completely stunned at what appeared before them. Hisami himself was facing the dragon, standing protectively in front of the three acolytes, with a simple hand outward toward the dragon, motioning it to stop. And this seemed to have worked, because the dragon had stopped in its tracks upon seeing the tribunal member. The beast breathed heavy breaths through its nostrils but knew better than to defy a member of the ninja tribunal. Hisami placed his hands together and bowed to the dragon, who bowed its own head in return. The dragon then flew above the river before its entire body turned into water and fell down in the form of rain. Sokka stuttered. Wow is right, that was all Mikey could say as well as even Azula was speechless, simply holding her hand out to feel the rain that fell. As the remaining acolytes and their friends helped each other back up, Hisami glanced towards Mikey and Sokka. Thanks Hisami Shisho. Mikey said. Yeah, thanks for saving us from the deadly water dragon. Sokka also thanked. Hisami gave a small nod before casting a disapproving glance towards Azula. The former fire princess's face contorted a simple scowl. What? Ow. Someone had hit her in the back of the head with something. She turned around to the rope of the bridge to see the Ancient One with a bamboo stick in his hand, shaking his head in a disapproving manner as well. Later that evening, all 10 acolytes and their friends had returned to their room with Master Splinter, the Ancient One, and Iroh. Momo was also present, curled up on Aang's lap. First an illusion of a scary fire demon, now a giant water dragon. Ty Lee questioned. These guys come up with some pretty crazy things. Well, you gotta at least give them points for originality. Toph put in. Yeah, if the tribunal thinks a water burping dragon is a teaching aid, then sign me up for homeschooling. Mikey stated. But we actually had that lesson. Sokka said. It wasn't our fault. They and nearly everyone else cast a glare on Azula, who held an ice pack on her head where the Ancient One had previously hit her. Azula scoffed. How was I supposed to know they had a pet dragon underneath their bridge? Are you forgetting how these yahoos played mind games on us a couple days ago, princess? Raph questioned. Did you ever stop to consider they had other fancy magic tricks up their sleeves? Seriously, what the shell were you thinking? Katara exclaimed to Azula. That you would just magically appear on the other side of that bridge. Well, considering Hisami was able to, I wouldn't say it was impossible. She scowled. Hisami is a trained member of the Ninja Tribunal who embodies stealth, Azula. Karai told her. Even with what stealth training you have accumulated in your time under Ozai's tutelage is futile compared to someone like him. What you did was stupid and reckless, Azula. Leo scolded. You put everyone's lives in danger, and for what? To try and prove something. That she's better than everyone else. Might put her thoughts in. Which is clearly no longer the case. I think I've heard enough. Azula muttered. I don't think so. Zuko contradicted. You're many things Azula, but reckless isn't one of them. Azula's actions were careless, that much I agree. Master Splinter stood up. But the fact that any of you were set against the tatsuo spirit was rash and careless. That thing was a spirit. Aang voiced in surprise. Well, maybe I could have talked to it. No Aang, you couldn't have. Iroh shook his head. That spirit has one sole duty, to protect the river. It answers only to the tribunal, no one else, not even you. How exactly do you know so much about the tribunal, General Iroh? Suki asked. Yeah, they even called you the Dragon of the West, and talked about how they knew you personally. Don added. They do. I was once an acolyte as well. Iroh answered, much to everyone's surprise, even Azula was mildly stunned. Uncle, you trained under the ninja tribunal. Zuko exclaimed. Yes. Iroh nodded. And it was not just me, even the other higher-ups in the White Lotus trained under them as well. Piando, Pakku, Jung, even Bumi. Bumi. He never said anything. Aang stated. Pakku never told us either. Katara voiced in surprise. Of course not, we were all sworn to secrecy so that no one could attempt to find the tribunal and use their powers for their own purposes. Iroh explained. Not that anyone from our world could actually pose a threat. Just asking out of curiosity, if the Fire Nation under Ozai's rule were to go to war with the tribunal, who would win? Leo asked. The tribunal would completely decimate them. Iroh answered, much to everyone's absolute surprise. In terms of raw power, each of them rivals that of a fully realized avatar. No way, Leo muttered as everyone present had seen the power of a fully realized avatar themselves, and to say that each single member rivals Aang in power, was honestly quite terrifying. Kinda makes you wonder, about this evil they mentioned and how dangerous it truly is. Aang said. Karai, do you know anything about them? Ty Lee asked. I have heard, rumors and stories of the ninja tribunal. The Kunoichi answered. But until recently, this was the first time I've ever seen them with my own eyes. I originally felt they were a myth, clearly I was mistaken. However, while most of the group was still in awe, Master Splinter's own anger had yet to deter, something Toph noticed. Hey rat man, you okay? I don't need seismic sense to tell you're really pissed off about something. Leo was among the first to figure it out. You have a history with the tribunal yourself, don't you sensei? Old wounds are slow to heal. Master Splinter pretty much confirmed Leo's statement. Learn what you can from the tribunal, for you will need it when the Dark One comes to battle. But remember, they will not hesitate to sacrifice you if it serves their purpose, even you Aang. Everyone had grave and serious expressions once Splinter told them this. So here, more than ever, you must all stick together as a family. Promise me, my sons, and all of you. Yes, Master Splinter. The turtles and all of Team Avatar said at the same time, even Karai bowed her head in acknowledgement as Karai put a hand on her shoulder. Suki held Sokka's hand, Aang held Katara's, and even Mai held Zuko's. Azula, even you. Iroh told his niece. Whatever grudge you have against us, or any royal status you had before, none of that matters anymore, not in the face of the tribunal. To them, you're an acolyte to do with as they see fit. If you wish to truly survive, you can no longer rely on just yourself. The former Fire Princess was silent for a minute, and despite the obvious glare she got from Mai, Katara, Raph, Sokka, Suki, and even Toph, she knew her uncle were right. Alright. Zuko wouldn't admit it, but he was pleased to hear his sister say she'd be careful as well. The next day, the 10 acolytes had gathered together for their next lesson in a large stone chamber, with Karai, Mai, Ty Lee, and Suki sitting on the stone steps from behind observing the lesson. Today's instructor was none other than Judo Shisho. The weapon is not simply a tool. It is an extension of skill, of body. Judo stated. Kinda like how a sword is an extra long, really sharp arm, right? Sokka said. Do not interrupt. Judo exclaimed. Yes sir. Sokka stiffened, not wanting to incur the wrath of Judo, as he arguably scared Sokka more than any other tribunal member. Hey, a Judo Shisho sir. I got a question. Toph raised her hand. Speak. Judo acknowledged the young earthbender. I get how some people need to use weapons, but do benders really need any? Toph asked. I mean, not to brag or anything, but I'm pretty much the greatest earthbender in the world and I can even bend metal. So, do I even need a weapon? The art of bending is a useful power, yes. Junto responded. However, those who rely too much on their bending will often find themselves becoming complacent. When placed in a situation where their power is useless, the bender themselves will also become useless. Even the self-proclaimed greatest earthbender is useless in the middle of the ocean. Well, he's not wrong. Don said to Toph. Yeah, I get it. Even Toph herself had to admit there wasn't much she could do in an environment like that. That is why true warriors are able to utilize both a weapon and their natural abilities together. Junto continued. Take Zuko for example. He is a master firebender as well as a master swordsman, able to use both techniques separately and even together. Zuko only nodded his head, while Azula narrowed her eyes slightly. Even the Avatar uses a staff as a weapon, despite being able to bend all four of the elements. Thank you, Judo Shisho. Aang bowed his head. It was not a compliment, but an observation. Junto contradicted. Any further questions? He asked the acolytes. When he received none, he continued. Now then, I can only pray that the great darkness never comes. But if it does, you cannot fight it with bits of tin and wood, not even with your control over the elements. Hey, I made this sword out of a meteorite. Sokka protested as he held up not only his space sword but also his boomerang. And boomerang has gotten me out of more jams than. Silence. Junto exclaimed, once again silencing Sokka before continuing. You all need stronger weapons. Forged to strike at your enemies both physically and mystically. Junto produced a whip from one of his elongated sleeves, fueled by his own mystic energy, which he slammed against the ground. The second it made contact, a wave of blue energy briefly spread across the floor before the entire chamber began to quake. Everyone present, acolyte or otherwise, stood up and straight looking in shock as the floor began to split open, to reveal a massive statue resembling the head of a dragon erupted from the floor, right before a large flame ignited from inside the dragon's open mouth. The spirit forge, maggots. Junto introduced to the acolytes. Fueled by the breath of 4 great dragons. Shisho or no Shisho, he better lay off of that maggot business. Raph commented, and even Azula was in silent agreement. Yeah, these guys are really into dragons. Ty Lee whispered to Suki, Mai, and Karai. Well, in Japan the dragon is considered a sacred and divine creature that represents wisdom and strength. Karai explained to her friends. Really? Cool. Suki said. That water dragon from yesterday could have fooled me. Mai commented. Those worthy, will find what they seek within. Junto continued. Those unworthy, incomprehensible pain. Cheerful. Toph muttered sarcastically. Now, who dares? Junto motioned for the acolytes to step forward, but none of them did as they looked towards each other, almost nervously. Even Azula wasn't fool enough to try the same thing twice as she simply waited for someone else to step up first. No one. Junto scoffed slightly. I expected much from the rodent's misbegotten pets. That's it. Raph exclaimed. I know you're not talking smack about Master Splinter. I hear ya, Raph. Nobody trash talks the rat man. Toph walked up alongside the red-clad turtle. You want worthy weapon boy, we'll show you worthy. Raph and Toph both walked up to the forge and placed their hands into the fire, but the second they did, the flames grew out from the forge and seemed to engulf them both, much to the horror of their friends. Toph! Katara exclaimed. Raph! Leo shouted as well as most of the group ran to try and help them, but the flames quickly died down to reveal the two were completely unharmed. Both Raph and Toph were surrounded by a similar aura as their own amulets glowed and they each bore a new weapon. Toph was surrounded by a vibrant green aura with glowing green straight lines, stretching horizontally before shooting upwards and became horizontally flat again near the top resembling mountains and flat tops. In each of her hands was a short steel mallet strapped to her wrists via rubber bands. Raph meanwhile was surrounded by a bright red aura with red glowing flames along his side and a trio of claw marks on the top of his head. He held a kusarigama weapon, with a scythe blade on each end of a connecting chain. Whoa, Toph had felt a surge of energy rushing through her as the aura around her and Raph began to subside. That didn't tickle. Raph felt the same way. Well done simpletons. Junto congratulated. Indignant rage and pride suit you both. Show me what gifts the forge has granted. They both turned to show their off weapons. We got these puppies. Toph smirked as she and Raph held their new weapons. Judo looked almost amazed. Banrai and Yama, I cannot believe it. He turned to the other acolytes. Worms, use the forge now. The other acolytes all stepped up, and even Kurai, Mai, Suki, and Ty Lee stepped closer to get a better look. One by one, they reached into the fire. First Katara, then Dawn, then Sokka, then Mikey, then Zuko, then Azula. Leo and Aang meanwhile hung back as there weren't enough room at first. Much like before, the flames expanded before each acolyte had a new weapon in his or her hands, all save Leo and Aang. Excellent. The Spirit Forge has granted you all great gifts. Judo stated. By the gods. He began to explain the name and powers of each weapons. First, he looked to Katara who held a navy blue bow, though she didn't have any arrows. Arashi, which can break even tsunamis with arrows of water. Next was Mikey, who now wielded an orange 3-section staff. Inazuma, which commands lightning from the heavens. Toph held her newly acquired mallets up. Yama, which can cleave the earth like a knife through butter. Sokka now wielded a double-bladed katana sword, a bright silver blade on each end. Hikari, whose light can shine like the sun. Dawn held a purple spear-like weapon. Byakko, the hungry ghost that calls the cleaving wind. Azula looked at a pair of armored gauntlets with sharp Teko Kagi claws on each end, both were dark blue with flame and lightning patterns on the armor. Hino Arashi, commanding flames and lightning colder than ice. Raph, once more, held up his red Kusarigama. Banrai, which can shatter mountains with its thunder. Finally, Judo looked to Zuko who held a long katana in his hands with a white blade. Gunshin, commanding the white flame of the Dragon King. Mai walked up to Zuko with a smirk. So, the Fire Lord has the sword of the Dragon King. Sounds fitting. Zuko smirked back at her while Azula could only look in minor jealousy at the thought of her brother having a weapon that sounded like the most powerful of all. These are the fangs of the dragon. Forged for champions. Legends. Judo stated to the acolytes. What about Aang and Leo? Katara asked as they had yet to receive a weapon. Judo looked toward the avatar and the blue-clad turtle, almost expectantly, but said nothing. Aang and Leo shared glances at each other before they both walked toward the forge, but before they could even reach, the flames vanished, much to their confusion. What does that mean? What happened? Leo asked Judo. Does it need to be refueled? Because I can give it more fire. Aang also said. Judo appeared to ignore them as he directed his attention back toward the rest of the acolytes. With the fangs of the dragon at your command, you will discover powers transcendent of your wildest imaginings. Leo looked back towards the empty forge with a concerned expression, and despite the same feeling within Aang, he tried to put on a smile for his friends. Hey, congratulations guys. Those are some pretty cool weapons. And Zuko, you have the sword of the Dragon King, that's pretty awesome. Thanks. Zuko nodded, though he did feel a bit bad for Aang. Pity you didn't receive any, Avatar. And I'm sure the mighty Leonardo will be fine with just those, bits of tin and wood. Azula said almost mockingly, only to get elbowed in the side by Raph. Aang, Leo, I'm sorry. Katara tried to comfort them. It's fine, I'm sure there's a reason for this. Leo tried to assure. You know what I think. I don't think you guys even need any fancy magic weapons. Ty Lee stated as she walked toward the pair. Aang, you're the Avatar. You can bend all 4 elements and do all sorts of crazy things that nobody else can do. And Leo, you're pretty much the best swordsman out there, you even beat Azula more than once. Het got lucky. Azula muttered. Not that good of a lair, are you? Toph smirked, resulting in Azula scowling. Judo stated that those considered unworthy of the forge would receive incomprehensible pain, but the fact that the two of you remain unharmed show that you are not unworthy. Kurai said. Meaning that this is either a test, or the tribunal feels you don't need any weapons. Dawn assumed. That's right. You guys are awesome, Mikey stated. Like Ty Lee said, who needs fancy magic weapons when you're both the best out there? This seemed to ease the two a bit and help them to feel better. Thanks guys. Aang nodded. Suddenly, a flash of light sinned near the side of the chambers, getting everyone's attention and catching the young warriors by surprise as the rest of the ninja tribunal appeared. Judo Shisho, the first artifact has been found. Chikara revealed. Seriously? You found one of the stolen artifacts? Sokka voiced in surprise. The artifact lies on the banks of the Kawachi River, guarded by Kappa Tengu. Khan informed. The Dark One's demons are poised to claim our prize. Chikara exclaimed. Excuse me, did she say, demons? Mikey gulped. Like that giant fire demon from last time. Ty Lee seemed equally frightened. Only something's telling me these are the real deal. Suki said. The appearance of the fangs is a good omen. Judo stated. Send the urchins, and even those 4 younglings. He referred to Karai, Suki, Ty Lee, and Mai. Acolytes or not, they could prove useful as well. We're standing right here, you know. Mai narrowed her eyes. Do not return without the cask. Khan instructed the acolytes and their friends. For if it falls into the hands of the Dark One's heralds, they will be one step closer to resurrecting their master. Not even 5 minutes later, Aang rode on Appa alone as he followed the flying ship, which the other acolytes and their friends all boarded, with Leo at the steering wheel. As they flew out of sight, Master Splinter and Iroh bid them farewell as Momo perched on top of Splinter's right shoulder, before they both glanced towards the ninja tribunal, who returned a glance of their own before walking away, leaving the 2 elderly masters to express their concerns for the young warriors. The 10 acolytes and their 4 companions had made it to the Kawachi riverbank, right by a massive waterfall with a series of rocks at the bottom, and at the top of the largest rock was a black and red cask, no doubt containing the artifact stolen from the tribunal. Of course, that wasn't what caught the attention of the young warriors as they hid in the bushes away from the river. No, it was what was guarding the cask. Demons, at least a dozen of them. They had turquoise skin with dark green shells and fins, resembling something akin to turtles, fish, and apes, complete with razor-sharp claws and teeth. They snarled and growled as they roamed across the river, guarding their prize. There it is. Don pointed to the cask at the top of the rock. The stolen artifact. I'm a little more concerned with those things guarding it. Suki gulped. Yeah, that's a whole lot of ugly. Raph commented. Come on Raph, that's no way to talk about your real family. Mikey chuckled, putting some humor into an otherwise tense situation for everyone else. What are those things anyway? Katara asked. They're demons, obviously. Azula replied rudely, earning a glare from Katara. Not just any. Those are Kappa Tengu, river demons. Karai clarified. I'm not exactly an expert when it comes to demons. Aang pointed out. Anyone got any ideas? Hit hard. Leo stated. Hit fast. Zuko said at the same time as Leo as they looked to one another to share smirks, thinking the same thing. Toph, how many do we got? Katara asked. Looks like only a dozen. Toph felt with her seismic sense. So yeah, let's go in weapons blazing. Give us a chance to test these babies. She smirked as she held up her newly acquired weapon, Yama. I strongly advise caution. Karai contradicted. There may be only a few demons at the moment, but we have no knowledge of their abilities. Karai's right, we can't afford to take any chances. Leo seemed to understand. Sounds like a good idea. Ty Lee was already on board. Azula rolled her eyes. Are you always this cautious before a mission? Makes me wonder how you even won the war. Hey, if you wanna take on the ugly fish demons, go right ahead. Mike pointed out. Save us all some trouble. Mikey and Sokka looked towards each other before they both came to the same idea. Hey Mikey, you thinking what I'm thinking? Sokka smirked. Yep, stealth mode. Mikey confirmed. We'll pull a Hisami and snatch the casket at ninja speed. And we'll be out of here before Fishy can catch the worm. Sokka finished as they shared a high five. Just because you guys got some fancy weapons doesn't mean you're on Hisami's level. Katara chastised. Yeah, we need to stay in the real world. Leo pointed out. I thought the whole thing with the tribunal was to learn to get out of the real world and throw science out the window. Sokka commented. Sokka, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not. Aang said. Sarcasm this. Sokka looked to Mikey as they both nodded and began to focus. Focusing, stealthing, they both said at the same time as they clapped their own hands together. Their amulets then began to glow before their respective silver and orange auras formed around their bodies. The two of them looked towards the top of the rock where the cask laid, and before they even knew it, Sokka and Mikey had suddenly appeared at the top of the rock right behind the casket, without the demons noticing, much to the surprise of all their friends, and even Mikey and Sokka themselves. Did we just, Sokka stuttered as he and the orange-clad turtle both smiled excitedly just as their own auras vanished. Yeah, I love being a turtle. Mikey shouted. Magic rules. Sokka also shouted. Unfortunately, their shouts drew the attention of the Kappa Tengu as they turned toward the rock, causing the smiles on the two idiots' faces to vanish into looks of terror. Uh-oh. They both gulped at the same time as the Kappa Tengu roared and marched towards them. Immediately, everyone else got ready for battle as they each drew their respective weapons. Alright, it's go time, Leo stated. Get Mikey and Sokka out of there and grab the artifact. The group ran straight into the river, hoping to catch the Kappa Tengu by surprise. However, right before they could even attack, their bodies completely dissolved into water and fell into the river, much to everyone's surprise. Where'd they go? Zuko questioned. Toph. I don't know, it's like they just vanished. The blind earthbender stated. Think they just ran away. Ty Lee hopped. Almost in direct response to her statement, more bodies of water arose from the river itself to solidify into more Kappa Tengu. But instead of it being a simple dozen as before, it appeared to be a small army of over 100 as all the young warriors were completely surrounded. No, Ty Lee, I don't think they have. Azula commented. Go. Attack. Karai exclaimed as the group broke off to engage the Kappa Tengu in a large battle. Aang sent a wave of fire with a roundhouse kick towards a small group of Kappa Tengu, only for them to vanish into the water again, where two suddenly shot up from behind to grab onto Aang. However, he was able to expand an air sphere around his body to blow them back. The water, Aang exclaimed. They can travel through the water. Then bend the water, you fool. Azula exclaimed as she shot a stream of blue fire at one Kappa, only for it to turn into water and shoot above her attack and slam into her to knock her down. Aang did just as instructed as he tried to use waterbending to create a large sphere of water from the river to try and capture the Kappa Tengu, only for multiple projectiles of water to shoot out from the sphere and punch him across his body to knock him back. Katara and Karai came back to back as the latter used her swords to slash at two incoming Kappa Tengu, only for their bodies to turn into water and swerve around them. Katara tried to use her waterbending to control them, only for her to get knocked back into Karai. I can't control them. Katara stated as she and Karai picked themselves up. Their bodies are normal when they're solid, but even when they turn into water it's like the water itself has a mind of its own. Karai scowled in frustration. The river itself is our enemy. Mikey and Sokka both jumped down to try and assist their friends, but it seems that even with their newfound weapons, they were all at a severe disadvantage. Even Toph, who tried to raise and shoot out multiple rocks around her body at a speed almost equivalent to a Gatling gun, the Kappa Tengu's bodies liquefied to avoid being hit as three of them shot towards Toph in their water forms to ensnare her in the form of water tentacles and pull her into the river with the intent of drowning her. Toph. Raph tried to run and aid her, but three water arms appeared behind him to push him down into the water as well. Realizing that fighting normally wasn't the way to beat these demons, Raph tried to focus himself. As he calmed his mind and focused his Kai, his amulet began to glow as his red aura and markings formed around his body. Raph leapt into the air. Banrai. His entire body spun around with the blade, almost like a massive shuriken with a red aura around it. He shot down at the Kappa Tengu holding Toph to blast them to pieces, while also creating a shockwave to blow the water away from Toph, giving her a chance to pull herself back up and regain her breath. Raph then knelt down to help her up. You okay, kid? Yeah, thanks. Toph thanked. Come on, you gotta focus. It's the only way to beat these fish freaks. Raph told her. Well, nothing else is working, so what the shell? Toph took a deep breath as she to begin to focus. Just like with Raph, her amulet began to glow as her green aura and markings formed around her body. However, something strangled happened to her senses. Before, Toph couldn't see anything, it was all just a dark void as before. But, the more she focused and channeled her Kai through the amulet, it was almost as if she could see the energy of the world, the trees, the river, all her friends, and even the demons around her. It was all like a green aura surrounding everything to her. And that was all she needed. Let's kick some demon ass. Yama. Toph raised both her steel mallets and slammed them onto the ground to create a massive vertical wave of green energy that shot across the ground and the river, slicing and obliterating all the Kappa Tengu it came into contact with. How was that? Toph asked Raph with a smirk. Not bad, twerp. Raph smirked back. Meanwhile, Mai tried to throw her knives out at a Kappa Tengu, only for it to dissolve into the river and reform into a series of tentacles that ensnared around her throat to strangle her. Mai! Zuko exclaimed as he began to focus his own Kai. A vibrant red aura formed around his own body as a series of bright red images resembling flames formed all over his clothes and body. He held Gunshin in his hands as a white flame erupted from the sword. Zuko ran as he sliced with the sword to cut through the tentacles, burning them and freeing Mai. 3 Kappa Tengu materialized around Zuko and his downed lover, but he was ready. Zuko sliced off the arm of one Kappa before decapitating it. He then proceeded to slice the second Kappa Tengu in half vertically, before thrusting Gunshin backwards to impale the third. Once the blade made contact with each demon, they burnt away completely, almost as if the water itself had been burnt. Mai looked up to Zuko in awe as he held the blade of white flames as his aura shined brightly. Her cheeks almost turned pink, even as he offered her a hand up. Mai, are you okay? She nodded, almost automatically as she accepted his hand. Yeah, thanks. She smirked. How about we stay focused on the fight, lover boy? But you were the one looking at me. Zuko pointed out with a knowing smirk, causing Mai to blush even further before they both rushed back into the fight. Meanwhile, Suki and Karai were both surrounded by multiple Kappa Tengu, with no possible means to defend themselves as their respective fans or swords couldn't even cut through them as their bodies dissolved into water before they merged into a large sphere of water to encompass the 2 female warriors and attempt to drown them. Suki! Sokka exclaimed. Karai! Don exclaimed as well as they both ran to help them. Let's do this, Sokka. Don stated as he and Sokka both began to focus their Kai as well. Sokka's silver aura and markings formed as a purple aura formed around Don, with a series of markings in the form of glowing purple vertical lines appearing on his body. Come on Hikari, show me what you got. Sokka actually threw his double-bladed sword out, almost like he would boomerang. The weapon itself spun rapidly through the air as it emanated a bright silver aura as well. It sliced through the water sphere around Karai and Suki almost like a hot knife through butter, setting them free before the weapon automatically returned to Sokka, who only looked in amazement. Whoa, sorry Boomerang, but I think you've just been replaced. However, no was not the time to celebrate as 7 more Kappa Tengu appeared from the river to try and attack Sokka, as well as Suki and Karai. But Don was next on the attack. My turn. Cleaving wind. Don leapt into the air as he spun around with Byakko, quickly taking the form of a purple tornado, which began to suck up all the water in this particular area of the river, as well as all the Kappa Tengu, still in their water forms, before Don released his grip and sent the water and the demons inside, splashing throughout the rest of the river before Don landed on his feet dramatically. Normally, I'd like to understand how an arsenal of magic weapons works before using it, but today I'll make an exception. At the same time, Aang sent waves of fire and air towards several incoming Kappa Tengu, but not even the fire blast slowed them down as their water bodies seemed to extinguish the attacks as they also maneuvered around the air waves. They tried to come down on Aang to drag him into the river, but he ascended on an earth pillar to avoid that. However, the Kappa Tengu's water bodies simply curled upward and around the earth pillar to grab onto Aang and pull him down. However, before even Aang could even counter the attack, Appa suddenly appeared from the sky, roaring as he swept his tail to create a massive gust of wind to blast the water around Aang away before landing by his master's side. Appa, what are you doing here? Aang questioned in surprise as even more Kappa Tengu, at least a dozen total, manifested from the river to growl at Appa, who growled and roared back in return. Appa charged forward, horns first at a speed that would have destroyed any normal enemy, only for all of the Kappa Tengu present to melt back into the water before merging together to form a giant geyser of water to blast Appa up into the air from his underbelly, before the massive stream shot up past Appa and slammed down onto his side to slam the mighty sky bison hard onto the ground before a massive sphere formed around Appa to try and drown him. But Aang wouldn't have it as he formed his air scooter and sped around the sphere of water, while simultaneously using his airbending to form a giant tornado around the air sphere and dissipate much of the water, allowing Appa to add his own strength to Aang's attack and blow away the tornado and water sphere of Kappa Tengu. However, despite Aang and Appa standing together, the Kappa Tengu present had not been defeated as they surrounded the Avatar and his loyal steed. Fortunately for them, backup would come in the form of Mikey and Katara. Come on. Aang needs help. I got the uglies on the left, you take the uglies on the right. Mikey was already on board as they rushed toward their friends, already focusing their kai as their respective orange and navy blue auras and markings formed around their bodies. Katara was on the left side already as she aimed her bow with a multitude of water arrows forming at the string. Urashi! Katara exclaimed as she launched the arrows. The water arrows acted almost like homing missiles as they pierced and damaged even the Kappa Tengu's own water bodies, curving around the area to hit and destroy all 6 of them on the side she was at. Katara looked surprised and impressed at her newfound weapon. I could get used to this. At the same time, Mikey was on the right side with his own weapon. Come on Inazuma. He spun his 3-sectioned staff and launched a series of orange-colored lightning bolts that struck and destroyed each demon he faced. To say he was impressed would be an understatement. I'm never giving these back. Meanwhile, Leo and Azula found themselves back to back as they were the closest to the rock with the cask at the top. The only issue is, their path was blocked by 10 Kappa Tengu. We can't keep this up forever. Leo stated. The former Fire Princess was reluctant to agree with the eldest Ninja Turtle. Then get the artifact, I'll take care of the demons. She took a deep breath and began to focus her own kai. Azula's amulet began to glow as an azure aura formed around her body, with the same colored pattern of chaotic lightning bolts and flames forming on her as well. Azula charged at the Kappa Tengu as she wielded both her clawed gauntlets, one end surging with blue flame, and the other with bright blue lightning. Hino Arashi. She leapt and spun like a horizontal twister of blue flames and lightning that shot at the group of Kappa Tengu like a rocket. When she made contact, there was a bright flash of light before Azula landed on her feet and looked in utter surprise and astonishment to see all 10 demons hadn't been burnt or electrocuted, but rather frozen. Their bodies were completely turned into ice before they shattered and turned into ice vapor. Azula looked at her clawed gauntlets. Well, color me impressed. She smiled slightly. With the obstacle cleared, Leo had leapt onto the rock and made his way to the cask. I got it guys. He shouted to all his friends below. Let's get out of here. He picked up the casket but saw 2 Kappa Tengu leaping onto the rock to try and stop him. But Leo had already leapt down, right as he saw the 2 Kappa Tengu leapt after him. However, before they even landed, Azula had leapt at them with her claws, her aura still glowing, slicing at them, freezing and shattering them in an instant just as she landed next to Leo. Everybody, Leo, Aang, Raph, Zuko, Mikey, Katara, Dawn, Sokka, Toph, Azula, Karai, Mai, Suki, Ty Lee, and even Appa regrouped. You got the artifact. Katara saw Leo holding the casket. Then let's go. No use. These things are everywhere. Toph could feel them with her Kai-enhanced senses. Karai, when you said our enemy was the river, I think that's literally the case. Ty Lee stated. Well, anyone got any ideas on how we stop a freaking river? Raph questioned. Aang, go all Avatar state and blow these things away. Sokka told him. I don't think they're gonna give me enough time to do that, Sokka. Aang told his friend. Dawn's eyes widened however as a solution came to mind. I got an idea. Toph, Aang, make an earth platform. Get us all as high as you possibly can. No time to question, the 2 earthbenders raised both their fists to create a massive earth pillar, shooting straight up into the air, at least 100 feet, with even Appa flying into the sky. Okay, now what? Aang asked. Mikey, Azula, we need as much lightning as you can get. Magic or bending, it doesn't matter. Just shoot it into the water. Dawn instructed. Mikey's orange aura reformed as he spun Inazuma again, while Azula just generated her lightning the usual way. Before the Kappa Tengu could even think about ascending the pillar after them, Mikey and Azula both shot their respective lightning bolts into the water, sending a massive current of orange and blue electricity surging through the water, as well as the Kappa Tengu. Aang, Zuko, as much fire as you 2 can give. Blast it into the water now. Dawn shouted. Zuko looked at Gunshin however and quickly tossed it to Leo, much to the turtle's surprise. Zuko. He said as much fire as possible. I can make my own, use that. Zuko told him. No time to argue, Leo only nodded as he, Zuko, and Aang quickly focused their own Kai. Zuko's red aura and markings formed, as even Aang's and Leo's amulets began to glow. Aang's tattoos glowed white as if he were in the avatar state, the only difference was that his eyes were still normal. While Leo's aura was a sky blue color, glowing blue diagonal lines, almost like streaks of flame, formed on his body as well as Leo twirled Gunshin to produce as much white flame as possible. Gunshin. Leo shot the sword forward to blast a column of white flame. Zuko and Aang at the same time blasted as much fire, enhanced by their own focused Kai. The two blasts of orange flame circled around the white flame like a vortex before it made contact with the electrified water. Boom! Asterisk. A massive explosion rocked the whole area, blasting away much of the trees and land around as well. The entire earth pillar almost fell apart completely from the shockwave, if it weren't for Toph using her earthbending to stabilize it. When the smoke cleared, everyone, even Azula, looked in shock to see the river was completely gone, leaving only a large crater. What the shell just happened? Raph questioned. Electroless. Dawn replied. What? Mike questioned as everyone listened to the purple-clad turtle's explanation. When you run a current through water, you break it down into its basic components of hydrogen and oxygen, both of which are highly flammable. Dawn explained. Interesting. Perhaps we should utilize that combination more often. Even Azula was impressed. I wouldn't say that. Dawn replied. Use it on a big enough body of water, you could create an explosion big enough to level mountains, so. Weapon of last resort. Got it. Suki seemed to understand. Still, we did it. Aang stated with a grin. We won and we got the artifact. Yeah, Team Avatar Turtle for the win. Sokka cheered as most of the group began to celebrate and share high fives, save for Azula, though she did have an honest smile on her face. However, the celebration came to a halt as Leo suddenly fell to his knees, dropping Gunshin, before falling onto the ground. Leo! Raph exclaimed. Leonardo! Karai shouted as they all ran to try and help him. Leo, what happened? Aang questioned as Katara was already using her water to try and help him. But, the second she tried her healing technique, Katara only looked confused. What? He's not hurt. What do you mean he's not hurt? Mikey exclaimed. There's no injuries, his bones are intact, not cuts, no bruises, nothing. Katara tried to explain. His injuries might not be physical. Karai said. What do you mean? Suki asked. If I had to make an assumption, I would say he used too much of Gunshin's power. Karai tried to explain. In all likelihood, it is probably the most powerful of the fangs of the dragon, and Leonardo used too much of its power. Either it drained too much of his Kai, or the physical backlash was too much of a strain on his body. Is he going to be okay though? Aang asked with concern. We'll need to get him back to the monastery as soon as possible. Karai said. Grab the casket, we need to leave now. Got it. Sokka said as he and Raph already picked up the cask and Toph lowered the earth pillar so they could make their way back to the ship. Later that evening, the acolytes and their friends had made it back to the lap of the gods just as the sun was starting to set. Yo Shishos. We got wounded. Raph stated as he, Aang, Katara, and Mikey carried the barley-conscious Leo into the monastery, with everyone else being close behind. Karai supported an injured Tai Li, Zuko did the same for Mai, Sokka and Suki carried the cask with Dawn, Toph, and Azula walking beside them. Appa even flew and sat down near the group. Master Splinter, Iroh, and the Ancient One all ran out once they saw their young comrades return, even Momo flew alongside them straight to Appa's horn. My sons! Master Splinter exclaimed, upon seeing Leo's current state. Leonardo, put him down. Aang, Raph, Katara, and Mikey gently set Leo down on Appa's tail for comfort. He used Gunshin, but we think he might have used too much of it and it drained his Kai. Aang tried to explain. He'll be okay, right? Katara hopped. He should be fine, the Ancient One assured. Leonardo just needs rest. Master Splinter nonetheless pulled out his water satchel to give it to his eldest son. Drink, my son. He helped Leo to get rehydrated. How is everyone else? Iroh asked the rest of the group. A few scrapes and bruises, but otherwise we're fine, uncle. Zuko assured as they sat themselves down. The ninja tribunal then came out as well just as urgently, but it wasn't for the sake of their acolytes or their friends. The cask. Has it opened? Is it damaged? Khan asked urgently. Your fancy treasure chest is just fine. Toph stated as Sokka and Suki set it down. You're welcome, by the way. She kicked it across the ground straight to the tribunal. Hisumi was the one to catch and pick it up as the other 3 tribunal members inspected the cask. I hope you guys know what we went through to try and get that. Sokka told the tribunal, seeing how they weren't paying any attention to their wounded companions. You should have left the injured behind if they put the cask in jeopardy. Judo stated. That single statement caused everyone to look at the tribunal in complete and total shock. Did he seriously just say they should have left the wounded behind just to save the artifact? Even Iroh and the Ancient One were stunned, and even Azula looked in shock. A year ago, she likely would have agreed with that sort of mindset, but now, that was no longer the case. Are you serious right now? Katara exclaimed angrily as she stood up to face the tribunal directly. Are you saying we should just abandon our friends and family? Do you have even the slightest idea what we went through? First you kidnapped us, forced us to be your students, now you expect us to just throw our lives away for you. Zuko exclaimed as well. I cannot believe you guys would even think about something like that, Aang said in disbelief. Everyone here fought to save that cask. We protected each other, saved each other's lives, even those that weren't acolytes. Doesn't that? Your lives are meaningless compared to these artifacts, even yours, Avatar. Judo stated. Master Splinter was nothing short of enraged. You heartless monsters. Have you no compassion for those who would give their lives for you? You are no better than the snarling wretches who serve the evil one. Our ways are our own. Khan stated before his expression relaxed slightly. But, you, your sons, all of you, deserve to know this. Hisumi set the cask down as an ominous aura formed around it. The evil that threatens both our worlds, that threatens all worlds, overshadows everything. Compassion, our own lives, even honor. The top of the cask fell off as the artifact itself hovered out, a dark aura emanating around it. If we fail, the world will fall to him. The moment everyone saw the artifact, every single one of them could only gasp in horror. Katara, Raph, Sokka, Mikey, Zuko, Dawn, Toph, Mai, Karai, Ty Lee, Suki, Master Splinter, and Iroh looked as though they'd seen a ghost, even Azula's blood ran cold as her pupils shrank. The artifact was a helmet, but not just any helmet, the helmet worn by the one individual who struck more fear into them than anyone else ever has before, even the late Ozai. Aang shook his head in disbelief as he felt his own heart skip a beat. No, it can't be, it can't be. Leo had fully awakened to see the helmet himself and was just as horrified as everyone else. The Shredder. Chapter 4, The Legend of the Six Dragons. It was nighttime as a black and red ship sailed in from the ocean toward the Kawachi River, but this wasn't any ship. This was the vessel owned and controlled by the 5 elemental heralds, formerly known as the Foot Mystics, now free from the control of the Churels since his defeat months ago at the end of the 100-Year War. Now it was time to fulfill their true purpose and resurrect their one true master. At last, brother mystics, we have arrived. The metal mystic stated as their ship came to a halt near the banks of the river. The first artifact is ours. As all 5 of them stepped forward, the water mystic used his control over the ocean to raise a wave to their level, allowing them to step forward and ride the wave down to the ground almost like an escalator. However, as the 5 mystics walked the bank of the river, they had found that the river itself had completely vanished, as if it had dried up suddenly, but that wasn't what got their attention. It was the bodies of all the Kappa Tengu that laid beaten and broken across the ground, though they were alive, but barely. No, the metal mystic exclaimed at seeing their demonic subordinates in such a state. Kappa Tengu, you wretched demon. The metal mystic pulled one demon up on its back before pressing his foot against its chest. Who did this to you? Tribunal. New. Acolytes, the demon painfully stuttered. And the cask? Where is the cask? The metal mystic questioned. They have it, the demon reluctantly revealed. To say the 5 mystics weren't pleased would be an understatement as their looks contorted anger and rage. You had one duty, to protect the cask. The metal mystic stated. The demon being questioned looked in fear. They weren't even human. Demon turtles, and children who could control the elements. They fought like demons. But you are demons. Demons who failed in your duty. The metal mystic replied. The Supreme Master we have come to revive accepts no excuses, and neither do we. The metal mystic stabbed the Kappa Tengu with his own metallic arm as his brothers worked to execute the surviving Tengu as well. The earth mystic opened the ground to swallow and crush several Tengu, as the fire mystic burnt others alive. The wind mystic sucked the air right out of their lungs as the water mystic pulled their bodies apart. By the time they were done, there weren't even ashes left of their subordinates. They said, demon turtles, they couldn't have possibly meant, the wind mystic put the pieces together. And children who could control the elements, similar to us. The water mystic added. So, it would seem the reptiles and the avatar have joined the ninja tribunal. The earth mystic deduced. It's actually rather fitting. The fire mystic said. The avatar before helped the tribunal in defeating our master, now they seek the avatar's aid once more in keeping him contained. But I think they'll find that history does not often repeat itself. The lap of the gods. The group of 14 young warriors, 10 of whom were now acolytes, tried their best to get some sleep in their own personal room. But no matter how tired each of their bodies were, their own minds refused to let them sleep. Mikey, Sokka, Tai Li, and Aang were among the most restless. I can't sleep, Mikey said as pretty much everyone had woken up. Me neither. Don said with a yawn. That makes 3 of us. Zuko was up as well. Can any of us really sleep after what we just learned though? Suki asked. I mean, we all saw that helmet and it belongs to the Shredder. Aang said with a grave tone as Momo curled on his shoulder. So that's the Dark One the tribunal have been preparing us for. But how is that even possible? Katara questioned. The Shredder was exiled by the Utrom. He was sent to an ice asteroid on the far side of the galaxy, with no resources or allies whatsoever. It shouldn't be possible. Sokka stated. And yet, we all saw that very same helmet. Azula said, her voice for once not carrying any sarcasm or vanity, as even her eyes shook slightly. Ty Lee looked to Azula with concern as she could see fear clearly in her aura. You think maybe the foot helped him to come back? Toph wondered as they all looked towards Karai. Karai gave a small sigh. After I took control of the organization, not every member of the Foot was so complacent, there was even a splinter group that broke off to continue serving the ways of the Shredder. However, it would be impossible for them to have the resources necessary to bring my father back. Well, if the Shredder really is this Dark One, the tribunal keep muttering about, why didn't they show up when he tried to crash Sozin's comet onto the Earth? Mike questioned. Hey, could you guys take it down? You'll wake the old guys. Raph told the group, referring to Iroh, Splinter, and the Ancient One who sat around a table in a meditative stance. They're not sleeping, they're meditating, there's a difference, Raph. Leo corrected. Not in my book, Raph said. However, just like the young warriors, Splinter seemed quite restless as he himself found it just as difficult to meditate. So much danger, never wanted this for them. Splinter. The Ancient One groaned, awakening Splinter as well as Iroh. I cannot meditate with you muttering like that. Besides, my butt has fallen asleep. Perhaps this may help. Iroh offered some tea for both the Ancient One, as well as Master Splinter. Tea always helps to calm the nerve. My apologies, Iroh, Ancient One. Splinter nonetheless accepted the tea. But the Ninja Tribunal troubles me more each day. I cannot allow their foolish judgment to cost me my family. Not again. Your sons are capable, sort of. The Ancient One acknowledged. And even if Zuko, Aang, and the others still have much to learn, they have the potential. Iroh added. Otherwise the tribunal would never have chosen them. Even Azula, despite her many faults. Ahem. Azula coughed aloud, getting the attention of the old masters. You do realize we can hear you, correct? Yeah, we're like 5 feet away. How about showing a little tact? Mikey stated as the group was now fully awake. Glad to know you have so much faith in us. Toph said sarcastically. Master Splinter, when you say the Ninja Tribunal cost you your family, what are you talking about? Leo asked. I am talking about my beloved Master Yoshi, and of a time in the past. Splinter answered. Wait, did Master Yoshi know the Ninja Tribunal too? Aang asked in surprise as he, the Turtles, and most of Team Avatar looked in surprise at this revelation. Who is this Yoshi person? Azula questioned. Master Splinter's old teacher. He was killed by the Shredder. Zuko answered for his sister. Which incidentally led to our own creation. Dawn revealed. But how exactly did Yoshi know the tribunal? Katara asked. Splinter gave a sad sigh as he explained the story. As many of you already know, Yoshi-san was a guardian, a warrior sworn to protect the Utrom and the arch-enemy of the Foot. He came to enlist the Ninja Tribunal's aid. Yoshi was my prized pupil, but he insisted on becoming a guardian. The Ancient One added. Flashback. Hamato Yoshi, clad in his uniform as guardian in the service of the Utrom, along with the Ancient One had entered the main temple of the Lap of the Gods as they approached the 4 members of the Ninja Tribunal who continued to sit on their thrones. Yoshi bowed respectfully before he spoke. My lords, we must form an alliance. The Shredder's threat is beyond imagining. This alien bug imposter you call the Shredder is nothing to us. Chikara stated. He is not the real Shredder. Do not underestimate him. Yoshi replied. He may even channel the evil of the one you fear. A distraction. Khan dismissed. We must remain vigilant against the return of the true Shredder. Masters, please reconsider. The Ancient One pleaded. We have spoken. Go now, and trouble us no more. Khan stated. With great reluctance Yoshi and the Ancient One left. End flashback. The mighty Ninja Tribunal ignored my master's warnings. Splinter continued. And because of the Tribunal's cold indifference, one of the countless victims of the Utrom Shredder would be my master Yoshi, and the Tribunal did nothing. Nothing. Tears of rage and sorrow formed in Splinter's eyes. Had the Tribunal heeded Yoshi, my master might be alive today. I am truly sorry for your loss, old friend. Iroh said sincerely to Splinter, knowing exactly what that kind of loss was like in the form of his own son. However, we both know that while the Utrom Shredder was indeed a grave threat, even he pales in comparison to the likes of his predecessor. Indeed, the Tribunal sees a bigger picture than we do, Splinter. Ancient One agreed. At least I hope they do. However, everyone present, human and mutant, bender, warrior, and ninja alike all looked in perplexity and confusion. Even Azula had no idea what to make of any of this. Wait, hold on, you said, predecessor. Sokka said. As in, there was somebody before the Shredder. Is someone gonna tell us what the shell is going on here? Raph questioned. Are you saying, that Chirel, the same psychopathic monster we all fought, who nearly destroyed our entire world, wasn't the Shredder? Aang questioned as well in surprise. Real Shredder. Katara listed. True Shredder. Ty Lee also listed. Utrom Shredder. Dawn listed as well. What's next to Cyber Shredder? Mikey shouted. Seriously, how many Shredders are there? Toph exclaimed. Karai. Zuko looked toward his friend, hoping she could provide some kind of explanation. As you all know, my adoptive father was the Utrom criminal named Chirel. Karai explained. But he took the name Oroku Sake to pass as human. However, I do know that he took the title of the Shredder from a Japanese myth of an ancient warrior that existed long ago. Up until now, I had thought that was all it was, merely a myth. But that may no longer be the case. So then, am I correct to assume this warrior is the true Shredder the Tribunal spoke of? Azula asked. Iroh, Splinter, and the Ancient One looked at one another as they all came to the same conclusion, to tell the warriors just who and what they are up against. All of you, listen very carefully. Iroh began in a grim and serious tone. It is time you all understand how all of this truly began. Of an evil darker than all evils. Splinter continued. A primal force of malevolence that was and is, the original Shredder. Everyone sat down as they all listened carefully to the story the old masters were about to tell them. No one really knows what level of the dark depths spawned him but. Japan 300 AD. Over 1700 years ago, in Yamato, Japan, the Shredder arose from foul stinking pit in the form of a terrible Tengu. The ancient Japanese city of Yamato was under siege as buildings were set ablaze by an eerie green fire and people all ran for their lives. Men, women, and children all screamed in fear as they ran from the source of this destruction, a massive 100-foot-tall demon that was known as the Shredder Tengu. Its entire body appeared to be some form of black armored scales with red armored shoulders and knees, white skeletal limbs, with its right arm bearing 2 super long claws, with a twisted samurai helmet on its head, and a demonic skeletal face with glowing green eyes and green fire emanating from its open mouth. This demon had only one goal in its existence. Iroh explained. To subjugate the entire world and turn it into his own personal empire of agony, destruction, and darkness. The massive demon gave a vile laugh as it used its massive claws to bring down entire buildings like they were nothing and laying waste to everything around it with a green fire breath from its mouth, as the people could only run away in fear, or fall into despair. The Shredder Tengu spread his evil everywhere, he seemed unstoppable. Splinter continued. Meanwhile, in a training dojo, 5 warriors, those considered the best warriors the country of Japan ever produced, possibly the most skilled warriors in the world, continued to train. But there were 5 great warriors in Japan at that time. Splinter told the story. Their courage and their victories were legendary. And you, young ones, have already had the honor of meeting them. The Ancient One said. There was Hisami. Hisami carried his 2 tesson as he quickly ran to a wooden dummy and sliced it to pieces in less than a minute. Chikara. Iroh said. Chikara lifted 2 poles, with enormous weights on each end, high into the air like they were nothing before setting them down to jump and flip, landing gracefully on her feet. Judo. Splinter listed. Judo threw out his elongated sleeves to send a hail of weapons including shuriken, kunai, and even sei and katanas, on a single, yet small, target on the wall. Every single projectile landed a near-perfect bullseye. Khan. The Ancient One listed. Khan spun a spear above in his head before tossing it straight forward, through a line of a dozen torches, extinguishing each flame yet leaving the torches themselves undamaged before the spear landed a perfect bullseye on the target he had aimed for. The Ninja Tribunal. Katara asked. But I thought you guys said this was 1700 years ago. What, are they like Aang? Were they frozen for 17 centuries too? Sokka questioned. You said there were 5 warriors. Azula recalled. Yet the tribunal consists of only 4. So, who was the 5th? The 5th and final warrior practiced his swordsmanship with his katana. He sliced and diced with incredible speed and versatility before jumping into the air and slicing a dummy in half completely. The 5th warrior was perhaps the most skilled and ambitious of them all, Oroku Sake. The Ancient One introduced. Sake. Leo questioned. Chirell's fake human identity. He was real. Enough interruptions. Just listen. The Ancient One told everyone. However, it was not just these 5 warriors who would be needed to fight this terrible evil. Deep within the Emperor's own palace, a group of sages and monks had gathered together in a circle with a series of scrolls and sutras gathered around them as they began to meditate. Of course, to combat the evil of the Shredder Tengu, the world would need more than just simple skill. Iroh explained. Sages, priests, and monks of Japan had gathered together to summon a warrior, one that would be capable of battling evil on a mystical plane as well. As the sages and monks prayed and recited chants, the sutras around them began to glow a bright white color as they floated in the air as they quickly came together in a circle before spinning around rapidly, creating a large surge of white energy in the middle in the form of a sphere. Suddenly, the sphere of mystical and cosmic energy exploded outward, forcing all the monks and sages back as something large and massive appeared out of the smoke. It was a dragon. A large, white-scaled, serpentine dragon with mighty wings. But the dragon itself was not the creature the priests and monks had intended to summon. As the dragon uncurled its body, it revealed its rider and master, a young woman with long black hair, wearing a red and black armored dress with yellow eyes. Unknowingly, the sages had tapped into the power of the Nexus. The Ancient One continued, and had summoned a warrior from another world. That warrior's name was Avatar Yukyu. An avatar? Aang exclaimed in surprise. So, I'm not the first avatar to cross into this world. No, you were merely the second, young Aang. The Ancient One said. The sages appeared to plead with Yukyu as they told her why she had been summoned. Yukyu had at this point already mastered the 4 elements, and once she had been told of the Shredder Tengu and the threat it posed in their world, she agreed to assist however she could. Iroh explained. Yukyu smiled as she bowed humbly, accepting their offer as her pet dragon nuzzled its head toward her and she simply patted it with a loving smile. Yukyu, along with Khan, Judo, Chikara, Hisami, and Oroku Sake walked into the Emperor's throne room. So, these 6 great warriors were summoned before the Emperor, who informed them they were the world's last hope. Well, that sounds familiar. Toph commented. The Emperor stood from his throne as the curtain opened behind him and he had shown the warriors 5 different yet near identical sets of armor that seemed to be worn by the likes of the samurai. From left to right, they were blue, green, gold, dark purple and red, and cyan. The Empire's greatest craftsmen had forged armor for the warriors. Splinter told the story. Special armor engraved with protective spells and talismans of purity. The Emperor walked down from his throne and approached Yukio. They had even offered to make the same armor for Yukio. Iroh explained, but Yukio held up her hand and shook her head. But she claimed she did not need it. The 5 warriors, now adorned in their respective armors, rode outside on horseback with Yukio riding her own white dragon above them. And so, these 6 warriors rode into battle together against the evil Shredder Tengu. Avatar Yukio and her dragon were the first to charge against the towering demon as the dragon unleashed its fire breath on the Shredder Tengu, but it held up its arms to try and defend itself before stretching one of his hands out to grab the dragon by the throat and pull it out of the air before slamming it on the ground. Yukio however had jumped from her dragon and with a series of kicks, sent waves of fire and air against the demon, knocking it back slightly, and allowing the 5 armored warriors a chance to get in close on horseback. However, the Shredder Tengu had recovered faster than anticipated and shot blasts of green flame from its fingers at the charging warriors while also blasting a large stream of green fire at the flying Yukio, who had formed her own air sphere to block the demonic flame, but it was strong enough to push her back. While at the same time, the Tengu's attacks had managed to knock Judo, Sake, Kan, and Chikara off their horses, but Hisumi was able to dodge the attacks as he appeared to be much faster on horseback than the others. The 6 warriors all fought bravely. The Ancient One said. Hisumi launched a volley of arrows at the massive demon, but the Shredder Tengu drove its claws into the ground and dragged them along to send Hisumi and his horse flying. However, Yukio had already recovered and used waterbending on a nearby lake to shoot out a plum of water to safely catch Hisumi and his horse and set them both down on the ground before Yukio shot the same plum of water straight at the Shredder Tengu, who countered with his green fire breath. The colliding attacks created a huge steam cloud that surrounded the massive demon. Despite overwhelming odds, they refused to give up. Splinter said. Using the steam to her advantage, Chikara charged forward and leapt right at the Tengu's face, plunging her spear into its cheek, and causing it pain. However, streams of green energy shot from its wound to ensnare and grab Chikara to throw her off, but Yukio flew in with streams of fire from her feet to catch Chikara and set her down before Yukio shot multiple large rocks from the ground via earthbending at the massive demon, which appeared to disorient it and knock it back. They had vowed to fight until the very end. Iroh also said. With the Shredder Tengu distracted, Yukio's dragon, who was being ridden by Judo, soared down at the demon before it shot another blast of flame at it. Once the dragon got close enough, it coiled its serpentine body around the Tengu and began to squeeze, letting Judo come in close with a pair of katanas that he used to slice at the demon's throat, causing it to roar in pain as Judo jumped down. With the demon appearing immobilized, Kan ran in and threw a chained mace at the forehead of the Tengu before Kan took the chain and ran around a nearby tree for added leverage as he, Judo, Chikara, Hisumi, and Yukio all gathered together to pull on the chain and try to bring the demon down. However, the demon was still far from helpless as it extended and threw out its limbs to free itself from the grip of Yukio's dragon before quickly slamming its extended arm on the ground right onto the Avatar and her 4 companions. When the monster retracted its arm, it looked in minor surprise to see an earth dome, which had been lowered to reveal Yukio, who had brought it up at the last second to protect herself and her friends, but it would seem Judo, Kan, Hisumi, and Chikara were unconscious from the shockwave, as Yukio glared at the demon. But, before either Yukio or the Shredder Tengu could even attack, Oroku Sake had leapt onto the chain that was still attached to the tree and the mace still stuck on the Tengu's forehead before he ran up the chain, unsheathing his own sword, and leapt at the demon to slice and hack at its body, causing large cuts to form all over as it bled more green fire. Saki's attacks were the most savage, the most devastating, next to the Avatar herself. The Ancient One described. But it wasn't just Sake on the attack. Yukio closed her eyes briefly before reopening them to reveal a familiar white glow as she entered the Avatar state. Just as the Shredder Tengu had swatted Sake off it, Avatar Yukio had flown up to catch Sake in an air sphere before setting him down. In the Avatar state, Yukio hovered in the air on the same level as the Shredder Tengu's face, her body in a large air sphere. She roared as she projected large plumes of flame from her mouth, hands, and feet before they curled around to form a horizontal ring of fire, just as Yukyu also began to pull in streams of water from a nearby lake as well as rocks from the ground, while they to begin to form diagonal rings of water and earth around her air sphere and ring of fire. Oroku Sake looked in awe and even amazement as he saw the display of the avatar's power. Yukyu was the first to attack with a multitude of large fire balls, blasting all over the Shredder Tengu with explosive results and knocking the demon back just as Yukyu flew closer to it. However, the Shredder Tengu recovered fast enough to blast a stream of green flame from its mouth to halt Yukyu's advance, but she was able to shoot two large pillars of earth from the ground to slam into the Tengu's face and disorient it before Yukyu blasted through the rocks and expanded her air sphere to knock it back further. With a roar of frustration, the Shredder Tengu had slammed its elongated arm onto the flying avatar. Though her elemental sphere protected her from most of the damage, the impact was powerful enough to send her crashing to the ground. The Tengu attempted to stomp on her like an insect, only for Yukyu to shoot two massive streams of fire and water right into the Tengu's face, only for the monster to blast an even larger stream of green fire from its mouth to push the attack back. Though the fire and water attack was pushed back, Yukyu flew away before the green fire hit the ground with explosive results. Even with the power of the avatar state, Yukyu could only battle the Shredder Tengu on equal footing. Iroh explained. Alone, they were almost evenly matched, polar opposites. The avatar, a being whose sole goal is to protect and preserve life and bring peace, against the Shredder Tengu, a monstrous abomination who only seeks destruction and death. Again, the Shredder Tengu launched a massive stream of green flame, perhaps the most powerful attack the monster could muster as Yukyu launched a single attack of all the four elements combined. Both attacks hit and pressed against each other in a bitter struggle, with neither side gaining an advantage over the other. However, Oroku Sake would use this as his opportunity to tip the balance in their favor as he ran towards the distracted Tengu. It was not until Sake intervened that the scales would tip in the hero's favor. Splinter said. Sake had leapt onto the Tengu's leg and plunged his sword into it, causing it intense pain as he sliced even more at the monster all across its chest and up toward its head. This seemed to distract the monster enough for it to loosen its grip in the blast struggle against Yukyu while she, still in the avatar state, pressed her elemental attack further until it scored a direct hit on the Shredder Tengu, blasting apart much of its front body just as Sake had leapt to completely sever the Shredder Tengu's right arm with his own sword. The monster had fallen onto the ground as Oroku Sake landed on its fallen form. The blast from Yukyu's last attack had not only blasted away much of its outer armor, but even revealed a massive pitch-black heart underneath that continued to beat, but not for long as Sake lifted his blade over the dark organ. I am Oroku Sake, demon. Let my name be the last sound you hear, the warrior stated before he plunged his blade into the demonic heart. It was he who finished the demon. The Ancient One said as the Tengu's life appeared to have come to an end. The heart stopped beating as the green flames died down, leaving nothing more than an empty husk as the Tengu's corpse began to melt and vanish away. Oroku Sake turned around to see Yukyu, who had just tapped out of the avatar state, along with Kan, Hisumi, Judo, and Chikara, all of whom nodded as even Yukyu had a congratulatory smile. Oroku Sake nodded back in return. It appeared almost the entire population of ancient Japan had gathered at the Emperor's palace for a great and glorious celebration as they had believed the ultimate evil that had threatened them for so long had finally been defeated. The Emperor held a great celebration. Splinter said as the 6 honored warriors, Yukyu, Kan, Sake, Judo, Hisumi, and Chikara all gathered together before the Emperor's throne. It was here he decreed that the warriors, including Avatar Yukyu, would be known as the 6 Dragons. There could be no higher honor. Iroh added. He awarded them their own banner, the 3-toed sign of the dragon. The Ancient One said as the Emperor held a white flag with the symbol that appeared to be an upside-down foot insignia as he presented it to the warriors, particularly to Oroku Sake, who dealt the finishing blow to the Tengu. Wow, that sounds amazing. Aang stated. Not just Yukyu, but even the warriors. Yeah, they all fought together against a near all-powerful demon and won. Leo agreed. I actually got a bit more respect for the tribunal now. Zuko admitted. Yeah, they actually sound pretty badass. Even their Sake. Raph agreed as well. But how come their Sake was such a cool guy but ours was a total psycho? Sokka exclaimed. Don't be so quick to judge, young ones. The Ancient One advised. The celebration back then was premature. What do you mean? Katara asked. Saki's battle with the Tengu had been fought on more than the physical plane. Iroh explained. Just as before, the warrior named Oroku Sake stood above the fallen form of the giant and near-defeated Tengu, ready to plunge his blade into its black heart and destroy its evil once and for all. I am Oroku Sake, demon. However, before Sake could deliver the blow, the demon spoke to him. There is greatness in you, warrior. I can make you a god among these insects. Every wish fulfilled, every dream made real, you could rule all, have all. Just allow me inside your soul, and the world will be yours. With that offer, Oroku Sake lowered his blade and nodded. The demon's words ignited some dark part in Sake. He accepted the offer. Splinter revealed. Invisibly, the Shredder's evil spirit merged with Saki's. The Ancient One explained as the evil essence of the Tengu, in the form of black and red energy left from the giant demon's eyes and into the eyes of Sake, fusing with him, turning Saki's own eyes into a glowing red as his body was engulfed in a dark aura before he lifted the blade and stabbed the black heart, even though it had already stopped beating long before it was pierced. Even as the warrior landed the finishing blow, the Tengu itself was only an empty vessel. Iroh revealed. The darkness of the Shredder had filled Oroku Sake, and now he was host to the greatest evil to ever walk this earth. Talk about making a deal with the devil. Don commented in a grave tone. So was Sake possessed by the Shredder? Azula questioned in a slight scoff. No. The Ancient One responded gravely. His essence fused with Saki's own being. He didn't become possessed by the demon, he became the demon. Every ounce of his humanity had been swept away like a dark tide, leaving nothing more than evil in the shell of a human body. Sake, still clad in his armor, walked on top of a hill above the Emperor's palace just as solar eclipse had occurred, but this wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a sign that the Shredder's evil had spread over Japan as Oroku Sake had a pair of demonic phantoms at his beck and call. Oroku Sake's betrayal plunged Japan into an age of darkness. Splinter explained. The malevolent essence of the Shredder had swelled within him and all around him. He used his newfound dark powers to summon armies of his lesser demons to serve under him, and their first act was to subjugate the nation of Japan for their new master. Iroh said. There seemed to be no limit to the evil he was capable of. Oroku Sake raised his hands and sent two large bolts of dark energy from the hilltop and down toward the Emperor's palace that reduced it to rubble in a matter of seconds. Within a short time frame, Sake had constructed his own fortress, a massive and dark citadel that loomed over a barren landscape, a symbol of his dominance. And outside the gates of the citadel, countless Japanese soldiers were under attack from the demonic phantoms. Despite their best efforts, they were nothing more than cannon fodder for this evil force of nature. Having created an impenetrable stronghold, and his only true opposition destroyed, Sake became the most feared warlord of all. His name was spoken in whispers. Splinter explained. Clad fully in his armor, which had become dark and twisted, helmet and all, Sake laid waste to the remnants of the soldiers who tried to retreat with what little surviving numbers they had. What was once armor that had symbolized hope and justice, had become something to fear and dread for ages to come, just as the man who once wore had become the demon that he had sworn to destroy. And the name they all whispered was, the Shredder. The Ancient One revealed. But what about Yukio, and the tribunal? Didn't they try to stop him? Aang asked. As they were now, Khan and the others wouldn't stand a chance against the Shredder. Iroh answered. Even with Yukio who could only appear to battle the evil of the Shredder on an even field. But regardless, the remaining dragons vowed to defeat the Shredder at all costs. The Ancient One explained. They needed to increase their power, and Yukio had an idea of how to do it. Khan, Hisumi, Chikara, and Judo, along with Avatar Yukio had gathered together with the same sutras and scrolls that the Emperor's sages and monks used to summon Yukio to their world and attempted to repeat the process in reverse. Yukio's white dragon had flown in and landed around them as all five of them sat together. Khan and the others formed in a meditative circle around Yukio as they all began to recite a series of chants together. Just like before, the sutras began to glow before they stuck to the ground and a vortex-like portal opened up underneath the five remaining dragons, and Yukio's pet dragon, as they all sunk in before the portal vanished completely. Yukio, Kan, Chikara, Juto, and Hisami now stood on top of a mountain overlooking the landscape that was the world of the Avatar, with Yukio's white dragon flying into the landscape below. Avatar Yukio had taken her newfound companions to her world, where they would learn the secrets needed to combat the Shredder. The Ancient One said. So, the tribunal was in our world. Suki voiced in surprise. The world of the Four Nations. Not exactly. Iroh said. It was the same world we hail from, yes, but this was an era before the Fire Nation, Earth Kingdom, Water Tribes, and even Air Nomads were even founded. This was an era when the world was occupied by tribes and villages, with no set governing body ruling over the world. The first step for these dragons to begin learning these new skills was to ready their bodies and spirits. Splinter explained as all 5 of them rode Yukio's dragon toward a beach. To do this, however, they needed to seek the only beings in any world that could grant them these abilities. The Ancient One said. The 5 warriors looked in awe as they saw an enormous creature arising from the ocean, one that had the massive body of a turtle, with a shell on the back that appeared to hold an entire forest, and the face and claws of a lion. The lion turtles. The lion turtles. Like that one that you and I met, Master Splinter. Aang voiced in amazement. Yes, the very same. Splinter acknowledged. Sounds like you guys got some cool cousins in our world. Ty Lee said. Some pretty awesome lion cousins. Mikey exclaimed. The lion turtles possessed unique abilities to pass the knowledge and power onto others. Iroh explained. It is how humans learned how to control the elements. Hold on a moment, I had thought the original firebenders were the dragons. Azula countered. Yeah, the badger moles were the original earthbenders too, and even Aang said the sky bison were the original airbenders. Toph added. And the original waterbenders were the moon and ocean spirits. Katara said. Yes, the dragons, badger moles, sky bison, and moon and ocean spirits were the original benders of the 4 elements. Iroh explained. However, the lion turtles were the ones to grant the ability to certain humans in ancient times long before the Avatar even existed, while the original benders taught the humans how to properly control the elements, which would become known as the art of bending. So, why did the tribunal look for these lion turtles? Did they become benders as well? Karai asked. No, the Ancient One said. Khan was the first to approach the lion turtle while Yukio and the others simply stayed back. The lion turtles had recognized something else in these warriors that was different from the humans in their world. So instead of granting them the ability to bend an element, they would instead give them the power to harness their kai in ways that no one in either world could imagine. Khan stood straight as the lion turtle slowly lifted its massive claw to press its talons gently against Khan's forehead and chest, where a faint white glow was seen from contact as Khan's eyes began to glow white as he felt knowledge and power began to fill his being. After Khan and the others had been granted their newfound power from the lion turtles, they had each scoured the globe, learning from the benders that occupied our world to improve upon their own unique abilities and master their mystic power. Iroh explained. Khan was in the North Pole, along with multiple waterbenders from this particular tribe, as well as more than a few airbenders, who were among the most spiritual of all the people in this world. He approached a single pool in an oasis in the North Pole, where the only 2 living beings in the pool of water appeared to be 2 koi fish, the moon and ocean spirits in their mortal forms. As the airbenders and waterbenders all circled together around the pool, Khan sat in the pool itself as the moon and ocean spirits began to circle him. He meditated as he focused his own inner kai, sensing the pure spiritual energy that emanated from the pool, not just through the 2 spirits beside him, but from the spirit world itself. As he meditated, he brought his hands together and focused his energy into that one spot and generated a white sphere of spiritual energy in between his palms, which he then spilled into 4 separate spheres of energy in the air above him. They each studied hard and learned much. The Ancient One explained, taking knowledge from the people of all corners of the world, not just those of one element or nation. Junto meanwhile stood on a rocky landscape, one occupied by a multitude of wild dragons in the middle of an active storm. By his side stood a group of firebenders as well as waterbenders. The waterbenders all together demonstrated their own skills as they pulled in the rain from the air and showed off their waterbending in a multitude of different techniques, as the firebenders walked toward the dragons and exchanged blasts of fire with them, who in return blasted fire at them as well, but it wasn't a fight, rather a greeting and a show of strength. Judo seemed to follow their lead as he made several hand gestures before shooting his hands outward. From the right, he pulled in streams of water combined from the falling rain, while from the left, steams of fire shot by the firebenders and the dragons flown into his left hand. He clenched both hands together as he appeared to create two large makeshift weapons of fire and water which he spun around like a series of blades and whips before throwing them up into the air in a spectacular display of power, much to the awe of the benders as even the dragons bowed their heads in respect. As their knowledge grew, so indeed did their power. The Ancient One continued to explain. Hisami stood in the middle of a grassy field, occupied by several flying sky bison, being surrounded and taught by airbenders and earthbenders. As they each showed their respective skills and taught Hisami how their bending works, he took knowledge from both of them as he stood in his own meditative position and made his own hand gesture, where a sphere of golden energy formed in his hands. Hisami was then engulfed in a bright golden aura as he felt his own speed and swiftness increase immensely. He ran alongside the airbenders and earthbenders, and even a few wild sky bison that flew in the air. The airbenders ran at a speed that was amplified by their manipulation of the air, while the earthbenders rode waves of earth or rocks at the same speed. But Hisami proved to be faster as he ran across the entire field at a speed 3 times greater than their own. Until finally, they became more than warriors. More than merely human, the Ancient One continued. Chikara stood in the mountains, along with multiple earthbenders and firebenders, the mountain being occupied by wild badger moles. The firebenders in the area demonstrated the strength of their pure fire as they unleashed their raw power on a series of rocks, melting them into small pools of lava, while the earthbenders worked with some wild badger moles to move a multitude of boulders up and down the mountain. Chikara then began to channel her own inner power the same way, only for her, it was in the form of a sphere of green energy. She telekinetically lifted a massive boulder in front of her, which she then sent flying toward a mountain that was at least 10 miles away. The dragons evolved, becoming forces of nature themselves. The Ancient One finished. Beings of sheer power, but tempered by wisdom and purity of heart. And they were not the only ones, for Avatar Yukyu had spent her time in the spirit world, learning and creating new styles and forms of bending that no other avatar has done before. Iroh explained. They needed every advantage they could get to stand against the Shredder. Yukyu meditated in the spirit world for a great deal of time, allowing her body and spirit to flow with the spiritual energy from this world. She slowly stood up as she looked at the ground in front of her. She held her hand up and concentrated. A patch of the ground in front of her began to shake and quake, before it superheated and melted. She then began to lift a sphere of lava into the air which she pressed together and began to shape it in the form of a disc, and thus, inventing lava bending. But it wasn't just lava bending, she began to use her different bending styles in combinations, such as mixing fire and air together in the form of a flaming vortex, and even being able to pull water out of thin air, from the hydrogen and oxygen in the air. Once this display of elements was finished, Yukyu took a deep sigh as she began to concentrate and spin her fingers. However, out of all Yukyu's achievements, there was one that stood above the rest. Iroh said. Lightning generated from Yukyu's fingertips before she shot it outward and sent a bolt of lightning straight into the air. She was the first avatar, and by extension he first firebender, to invent the technique of lightning. Soon, Avatar Yukyu rode her white dragon through the air till they saw Khan, Judo, Hisami, and Chikara, all clad in their respective armors, were waiting for them on a hilltop. She flew down on her reptilian steed and landed next to them. After they learned what they needed to learn, the 5 warriors declared they were ready to face their enemy. But they wouldn't be facing him alone. Splinter said. The Avatar and her 4 companions looked down the hill to see they had assembled a grand and mighty army, consisting of firebenders, waterbenders, airbenders, earthbenders, and even non-benders armed with all sorts of weapons. In addition, there were also a multitude of sky bison, dragons, and badger moles that would serve as steeds and fellow soldiers. With everything they needed, Yukyu, Khan, Hisami, Chikara, and Judo made several hand gestures and recited a simultaneous chant as a large portal opened up in front of them, allowing them to cross between their world into the one they had intended to save. Outside the Shredder's citadel, an army of demons of all shapes and sizes guarded their master's stronghold with their lives. However, the demons at the front heard the neighing sounds of horses, where they looked up a hill to see 4 of the dragons on horseback, with Khan bearing the banner of the three-toed sign of the dragon. Immediately, the demons were put on alert as they readied for a fight. But the fight would prove to be much bigger than they could have anticipated. The four dragons present rode their horses down the hill, and not far behind them was their entire army. With Yukyu leading the charge from the sky on her white dragon, with countless other dragons and sky bison, all having benders and warriors riding on them charging in the air. While on the ground, Khan, Chikara, Hisami, and Judo led the charge of multiple warriors and benders who either ran on foot, rode on badger moles that emerged from the ground, or moving rock platforms via earthbending. Despite the vastness of the army, the demons attacked as well. They roared as half of the army charged the ground or took to the skies. At last, they were prepared to confront the Shredder, once more. Splinter stated, "An army of the people from another world, all united by a single purpose, to protect all they hold dear." The dragons and sky bison engaged the flying demons as the warriors shot arrows, or benders shot streams of fire, water or air to knock the demons out of the sky as the demons engaged the flying animals and their riders as well. While on the ground, benders of earth, fire, air, water, and even warriors who held only swords, shields, spears, and axes duked it out with countless ground-based demons, alongside the badger moles. In no time, the area around the citadel had become a war zone the likes of which had never been seen. The Shredder sat in his throne room, observing the battle via a magical screen right in front of him. However, his attention was diverted as his entire throne room began to quake until the floor suddenly exploded, with Yukyu, Khan, Chikara, Judo, and Hisami leaping out of the hole and landing dramatically on the floor in front of him. "My old friends," the Shredder greeted nonchalantly. "Are you in such a hurry to meet your doom? Oroku Sake, you were once a warrior whom I had nothing but the highest respect for. I even considered you my friend," Yukyu said before she shook her head in disappointment. "It pains me to see just how far you have fallen. It is time to pay for your crimes, Shredder," Khan declared. The man-turned-demon known as the Shredder stood up from his throne. "You fools are the only ones that will pay. Pay, with your pathetic lives." He blasted two streams of dark energy from his hands straight at them, only for Yukyu to block the attack with an earth well. This time when the Shredder attacked, the dragons were ready. The Ancient One described. Hisami suddenly appeared behind the Shredder, much to his surprise before he laid a multitude of punches and kicks at a speed that seemed almost impossible to see before he sent Shredder flying into the air. However, Shredder was able to stabilize himself as he hovered before blasting more bolts of dark energy at Hisami and the others, forcing them to scatter. Yukyu had created two large tendrils of water from the air around her which she wrapped around her arms and lashed out at Shredder, ensnaring his neck and his waist, and pulling him straight down into a double kick from Yukyu, sending a fireball right at him. Though the Shredder halted the attack with dark beams from his eyes, the explosion sent him skidding on his feet back closer towards the entrance of his throne where Chikara had been waiting. Chikara punched Shredder so hard, he was almost sent reeling to the ground. The two grappled with one another as they pressed their own strength against each other. It would seem the two were almost even in strength. However, this also left him open for Judo to send out a hail of spiked chains from his armor's gauntlets, all of which pierced into Shredder's back, causing him to yell in pain before he heaved Shredder high into the air to slam him down into the ground. But before Judo could even press the attack, a large surge of dark energy shot out from where Shredder stood as he blasted wave after wave of dark magic in virtually all directions, forcing Hisami, Chikara, and Judo to dodge as Yukyu hovered in the air and tried to counter with waves of fire, only for her to be blasted back by a large beam of dark energy, sending her crashing into the wall. The Shredder was about to blast another powerful attack at the downed Yukyu, viewing her as the greater danger. However, this proved to be a fatal mistake as right when he blasted his attack, Khan appeared in front of Yukyu as he created a large sphere of spiritual energy which he not only used to block the attack, but even pressed it forward against Shredder's power. It got to the point where it even overwhelmed the demon Shredder and encompassed him in its purifying energy, which was almost like poison to the monster, causing him to scream in absolute agony. But that wasn't the end of it. As Khan kept him trapped, Yukyu had recovered as she began to twirl her fingers, generating a surge of lighting before shooting a bolt at the trapped Shredder, scoring a direct hit that shot through his otherwise twisted heart, causing him to fall onto the ground. Though that attack could have certainly killed a normal person, the Shredder was far from normal as the attack only knocked him down onto the ground. He was still able to pull himself back up. It was clear that his former friends have grown much stronger, having underestimated all of them. The Avatar was no longer his only threat. All the more reason to destroy them all right here and now. Now, you shall taste the terrible beauty of true power. The Shredder stated as waves of black and red energy began to envelop his entire body. And you shall be destroyed. The malevolent force of the Shredder Tengu that had merged with Oroku Saki's spirit was being brought to the surface as his entire body was engulfed in a dark red glow, ascending high above the heroes before it finally exploded in a brilliant flash of power. The explosion that destroyed the upper part of the main palace had caught the attention of the army of benders, warriors, and animals from the world of the Avatar, having all but won their battle against the demon hordes. However, they, as well as Yukio, Kan, Judo, Hisumi, and Chikara could only look in shock and borderline horror at the monstrosity that now stood before all of them. It was a massive dark-scaled dragon-like creature with razor-sharp teeth, talons, and claws. Its outer body appeared dark purple, almost black, with massive wings and bladed claws at the end, with long red scales along its back. It had two tails with red tips at the end, armor appearing merged with its chest, and a dark red headpiece almost like a dark crown embedded on its head, with glowing red eyes. The Shredder Dragon gave a bone-chilling and demonic roar that shook the very heavens before he went on the attack, going straight for the army that served the Avatar and the four dragons. He shot a steam of dark red fire from his mouth that easily incinerated almost half the ground forces in an instant as they all tried to retreat, with the earthbenders or badger moles digging in the ground for cover. The natural dragons, sky bison, and their riders tried to fight back with streams of fire, gusts of air, or any other weapon a human could use, but this did little more than irritate the Shredder Dragon as he pursed his airborne foes to swat many dragons and sky bison from the sky. The Shredder had manifested his dragon avatar. Master Splinter stated. His what? Virtually all the listeners exclaimed at the same time. An avatar. But I thought Aang and Yukio were. Katara tried to speak. Aang and Yukio are the Avatar, a being that you all know, is the human embodiment of the great bridge between the physical and spirit worlds of our dimension. Iroh explained. However, this was merely a physical manifestation of the Shredder's decayed spirit, which took the form of a dreaded and demonic dragon. However, the five heroes were prepared even for this. Splinter said. Yukio closed her eyes before they opened again, revealing the white glow that indicated she had entered the Avatar state, but she wasn't the only one. Hisumi, Judo, Chikara, and Kan, all concentrated their own Kai and power, using all the knowledge they had learned as they began to channel their spirits to make them manifest on a physical plane. An eerie white aura formed around all four of them as they began to ascend into the sky, while a spiral of wind and mystic energy formed around them. Their training allowed them to tap into eternal energies of the astral plane, and they too manifested their dragon avatars. Splinter revealed. Dragons of purity, of light and power. In a bright flash of light, the four warriors assumed their respective dragon avatars. Hisumi took the form of a mighty golden dragon with massive wings, and a beaded necklace. Juto's dragon form had blue scales along its chest, shoulders, and knees, with white-skinned arms, legs, tail, and head. While his wings appeared much smaller, there were 8 of them, but he could still fly all the same. Chikara's dragon form was similar to Hisumi's only green, with long spikes along her back. Finally, Kan's dragon avatar had cyan-scaled armor and tail, with brown arms and legs. He had no wings at all, but he could still fly as well. Yukio had also formed her own elemental sphere while in the avatar state as she flew alongside her comrades, circling the Shredder Dragon as he perched himself along the remains of his palace. And thus, began an epic battle of good against evil fought on the physical and mystical planes, dragon against dragon. Iroh said. The Shredder Dragon unleashed a massive stream of dark red fire from his mouth in all directions at his circling enemies. Avatar Yukio was the first to attack as she shot multiple large flaming projectiles in the form of missiles with razor-sharp rocks at the front to deal extra damage. This forced the Shredder Dragon to stop his attack as he tried to block the attack with his wings, but this left him open for the Chikara Dragon to slam him in the back and send him crashing onto the ground. The second he hit the ground, Avatar Yukyu showed off newfound mastery of lava bending as she created a massive pool of lava all around the Shredder Dragon and erected tendrils of lava to ensnare the distressing Shredder Dragon as he was pulled in deeper before he was completely submerged. Yukyu then cooled off the lava quickly with as much air and water as she could generate, solidifying it into solid rock. Though still in the avatar state, she hovered in the air as the tribunal dragons landed around the area. But the Shredder Dragon suddenly emerged from the ground in explosive fashion. The shockwaves sending the Judo Dragon and Hisami Dragon crashing out of the citadel and into the mountains around the area, as well as Avatar Yukyu hurtling up through the air. The Chikara Dragon tried to go on the attack, but the Shredder Dragon grabbed her with his bladed wings before slamming her onto the ground and sending her crashing into a building. The Khan Dragon however recovered as he roared at the Shredder Dragon, who responded with a powerful blast of dark red fire from his mouth. Khan however took to the air to avoid it. After a few more blasts that all but destroyed the remains of his citadel, the Shredder Dragon took to the skies where the Tribunal Dragons and Avatar Yukyu met him in an epic aerial battle. Khan, Hisami, Chikara, and Judo attempted to grab and overwhelm him, but the Shredder Dragon's physical strength seemed to keep them all at bay. However, this served as the perfect opening for Avatar Yukyu to come in, twirling both pairs of fingers and generating a double surge of lightning before shooting out both fingers and creating a double blast of lightning, blasting a hole clear through the Shredder Dragon's right wing. The Shredder Dragon turned his wrath towards Avatar Yukyu as he generated a massive surge of dark energy from his claws and blasted a beam of pure darkness straight at her that almost completely engulfed her and obliterated her entire elemental sphere, but even she was prepared for this as she appeared to be keeping the dark energy at bay with only her bare hands. Avatar Yukyu was instrumental in the Shredder's defeat. The Ancient One explained. Her time in the spirit world allowed her to harness a new form of bending that no other bender could ever achieve. A fifth bending style if you will, one that only a select few benders could even attempt, let alone master. Energy bending, the ability to bend one's own inner life force as well that of others. Yukyu's entire body began to turn a bright blue as she tapped into her own energy bending power, using her own energy and projecting outward like a shield to protect her from the dark blast of the Shredder Dragon. Soon a white mark formed on her body, a glowing emblem on her chest that was in actuality the symbol and form of the spirit of light and peace, Rava. Using this technique, Avatar Yukyu had shot herself through the dark stream, like a hot knife through butter, before making it straight to the head of the Shredder Dragon, where she placed her hands on its forehead and began to use her energy bending to disorient the Shredder's own dark and demonic spirit, distracting it long enough for the Tribunal Dragons to attack. The Khan Dragon shot a blast of cyan-colored energy from his hands, which the Judo, Chikara, and Hisami Dragons added with their own blue, green, and gold energy beams of their own. The combined power of all five of them was enough to nearly obliterate the Shredder Dragon, causing a powerful explosion that rocked the whole sky. Out of the dust cloud fell the Shredder, in his humanoid form, before he fell all the way back to the ground and making a large crater upon impact. It was finally over, the Shredder was defeated. The survivors of the heroic army, be they human or animal, all slowly approached the crater as Yukyu landed along with the Tribunal Dragons before all five of them tapped out of their respective spiritual states and returned to normal as they all gazed into the crater at the Shredder's unresponsive form. The heroes had defeated the supreme evil. The Ancient One stated. However, though the Shredder was defeated, he could not be destroyed. Iroh added. Oroku Saki's own essence had become one with a force of pure evil. And evil itself is a force of nature, it can never be truly destroyed, merely changed from one form to another. Therefore, the heroes had to find a way to keep the evil of the Shredder contained, forever. Master Splinter said. By the time Oroku Sake had regained consciousness, he was unable to move. An aura had been placed around him, courtesy of Yukyu's energy bending that rendered him immobile. In addition, he was missing his helmet and gauntlet, while his immobile body was placed in a sarcophagus. Judo, Hisami, Chikara, and Khan surrounded him. What are you doing? Sake questioned as Khan telekinetically lifted the top of the sarcophagus and began to move it toward Sake, with the intent on trapping him inside forever. The power of the Avatar and the dragons kept him helpless as they placed him in what they prayed would be his final resting place. The Ancient One said. I will return. This world will be mine. Oroku Sake vowed. You will pay for this. You will pay. Those were his final words as he was locked in the sarcophagus. And now that the Shredder had been contained, the Benders in the army that served Yukio and the tribunal got to work on using their respective powers to create a fortress to contain the Shredder even further. The Earthbenders, led by Yukio, erected a massive mountain that stretched all the way to the clouds as the Firebenders and Dragons all used their fire to melt the top and give it shape, while the Waterbenders and Airbenders, along with the Sky Bison, used their own abilities to cool off the intense heat, while the Badger Moles cleared out the debris. Though it took a great deal of time, along with the aid of Khan and the others, they had constructed their fortress. With the aid of their allies, Yukio and the other dragons were able to construct the monastery they needed to entomb the 3 artifacts of the Shredder: his helmet, gauntlet, and body. The Ancient One explained, "The lap of the gods." With the enemy defeated, it was time to return home. The sun had begun to set over the lap of the gods as Yukio and the survivors of their army, along with her own white dragon-faced Khan, Hisami, Chikara, and Judo, to pay their final remarks. Now that Shredder had been sealed away, Yukio and her forces would return to the world of the Avatar. Iroh explained, "The survivors of this army, along with Yukio, would use what they learned with each other, and the other dragons, to create a society that would not be divided by any kind of boundary, one that would seek and protect philosophy, beauty, and truth, spreading these messages across the world in an attempt to bring peace." The Order of the White Lotus, Zuko stated in realization. And a vow had been made that day. The Ancient One said as Yukio made one final approach to her 4 comrades. If the darkness of the Shredder would ever return, the Avatar of that era would aid the tribunal however he or she could. Yukio and the tribunal made one final bow before the Avatar turned and entered a large portal with her army, returning to the world of the Avatar, leaving the remaining 4 dragons to begin their long vigil. Since that fateful day, the tribunal has kept a careful vigil over the Shredder's helmet, gauntlet, and body, for if these 3 artifacts ever were to come together, the Shredder could very well be revived. Master Splinter said. "Wow, 1700 years. Mikey said in awe. "That is one looning vigil." Sokka said. "They knew the Shredder's evil would never die." The Ancient One said as the story came to an end. "Reality, present day. They began training others." Master Splinter continued. "Those that could help them in their fight, acolytes chosen for their potential and purity of heart. The Order of the White Lotus also scouted for potential acolytes in our world as well." Iroh revealed. "We would send them to the lap of the gods for the tribunal to train and share the legend of the 6 dragons, to ensure the threat of the Shredder was never forgotten. The tribunal taught an art of fighting with the power of the dragon at its call, which would become known as ninjutsu." The Ancient One said. "And these 4 immortals, the remaining dragons, became known as the Ninja Tribunal." Master Splinter finished. All the listeners present, Aang, Leo, Raph, Zuko, Katara, Don, Toph, Mikey, Sokka, Karai, Mai, Ty Lee, Suki, and even Azula were left in awe as they now heard the full story and let it all process. "So, the Shredder, the one whom my father based his human identity off of, he was real," Karai said in a grim tone. "An ancient demon, who is, for a lack of a better term, pure evil," Katara voiced in a grim expression. "Meaning the alien Utrom we fought was an imposter, who was just using the name of the original demon Shredder to gain respect," Don stated. "And even though Chirel himself was nothing short of pure evil, probably the worst monster our world has ever seen," Sokka began. "The Shredder before him sounds like he's even worse," Suki finished. "And that thought is actually quite terrifying," Mike commented. "And this original Shredder has all sorts of butt-kicking magic powers that almost destroyed the Ninja Tribunal and a fully realized avatar," Raph said. "The Tribunal had to travel to our world and learn all sorts of fancy magic tricks of their own just to even stand a chance against him," Toph said. Azula looked to her own hand with a serious, and even fearful expression. "The entire reason lightning bending even came to be was to combat this demon Shredder, and even it being used by its original master could not destroy him with it. The Avatar is supposed to be the bridge between the human and spirit worlds." Aang began. "The spirit and human elements merged together to bring balance and maintain peace, to preserve life. But this demon Shredder, a man merged with a force of evil, whose sole existence is to bring destruction and chaos, a harbinger of death. Almost like he's some kind of anti-avatar. And now someone's trying to resurrect him." Leo said. The greatest evil either of our worlds have ever known. And the only thing possibly standing in his way is us. Zuko said in a serious expression. We are all that stand between the resurrection of the demon Shredder and what is more or less the apocalypse. And we are way the shell out of our league. Mikey exclaimed as he and Ty Lee were nothing short of terrified. Is there any chance we can all still go home and not face certain death? Ty Lee asked hopefully and fearfully. The three old masters gave her a serious expression as all her friends, human and mutant, had quite frightened yet serious expressions of their own, even Azula. No, I didn't think so. And this is the end of Season 2 Part 2 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't really leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.